Okay, we're going to go ahead and get this meeting started. Clerk Reed, would you take the roll, please?
Alderman Fisk.
Here.
Alderman Braithwaite. Here. Alderman Nguyen. Here. Alderman Wilson. Here. Mayor Haggerty.
Here.
Alderman Ruth Simmons.
Here.
Alderman Suffredin. Alderman Revelle. Here. Got louder. Alderman Rainey.
Here.
And Alderman Fleming.
Here.
All right, terrific. We have everybody tonight except Alderman Suffredin with us. So in terms of major announcements, given the stamina of everybody in this room and everybody at this dais, we took care of one of the proclamations in my office tonight. And I just wanted to make note, we had two proclamations that I issued. One was for National Hispanic Heritage Month. You know, the importance of the contributions that Hispanics have made to our common goals to celebrating Hispanic culture and to working toward a stronger, more inclusive, and more prosperous society for all. National Hispanic Heritage Month will be September 15th through October 15th. And as many people know, our Hispanic or Latino population in Evanston has been growing and is about 9% of the population here, and that's following a national trend. So let's all take note of that. And then secondly, there was a proclamation that will be given later. They had to leave for the 60th anniversary of the Erie Family Health Center. Okay, here in the Chicago area. So 60 years, right? Pretty impressive. And as many folks know, we now have the Evanston Skokie Health Center, which opened a few years ago and now serves over 7,000 patients annually who speak 50 different languages, and no patient is turned away for their inability to pay. So it's something that we should all be proud of, and please recognize, join me in recognizing October 6th as the Erie Family Health Center Day. So, and lastly, I wanted to just make a statement about our fine city manager, Wally Bobkowitz, who is to my right. On October 18th, so last week, the City Council met in executive session to complete the annual review. September 18th, the City Council met in executive session to complete the annual review of City Manager Wally Bobkowitz. This evaluation marked the completion of 8 years of service for Mr. Bobkowitz as Evanston's City Manager. The City Council and I gave the City Manager a positive and strong performance review. The City Manager achieved or exceeded expectations in each of 18 categories that he was evaluated on. Mr. Bobkowitz received particular praise during this evaluation for his communication skills, transparency, ability to build an exceptional management team, and his leadership in creating an equity and empowerment coordinator. Prior to the evaluation, the city manager requested that the City Council and I not consider him for any salary adjustment, and he requested no changes to his current contract dated October 13th, 2016. The City Council and I thank you, Wally, for your service to the residents of Evanston and look forward to working with you for many more years. Thank you. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Mr. City Manager, for any public announcements.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and thank you for your positive evaluation. Next, I'd like to introduce the Fire Chief, Brian Scott. We have Fire Prevention Week coming up, and Chief Scott is here to talk a little bit about the activities we have planned. Chief, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. Mayor Haggerty, members of the City Council, City Clerk Reed, City Manager Bobkowitz, good evening. I just want to briefly talk about a few initiatives that the Evanston Fire Department will be undertaking with our community partners for Fire Prevention 2017, which runs from October 8th through the 14th. And this year's theme is Every Second Counts, Plan 2 Ways Out, which places emphasis on the importance of home escape plans and a working smoke detector in every home. First, we're going to kind of kick things off a little bit early on Saturday, October 7th, where we and our great partners at Home Depot at 2201 Oakton, we're going to work together and collaborate on doing some do-it-yourself projects with some of the children in the community. So we're going to be out there with a fire truck, and we'll be having stickers and helmets, and we're going to build different projects, including a fire engine bank. Our main event will be Sunday, October 8th. We'll have our annual open house, and that will be 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. at Fire Station Number 5, located at 2830 Central Street. This always proves to be a great community event for the community. We'll have plenty of things to do for residents of all ages. We'll have our usual station tours and apparatus displays. We'll have action demonstrations by our firefighters. We'll have firefighters doing auto extrication, high-angle rope rescue, as well as fire extinguisher training. And of course, we'll have free food and refreshments for everybody, as well as our fire safety trailer and a very new and very popular activity where we have our children's firefighter challenge course, which is we have the little folks dress up in firefighters equipment and allow them to participate in firefighter activities, and they can perform on the course and win a prize. During the school week beginning October 9th, the firefighters will be conducting supervised fire drills in all the schools within the city of Evanston. And then we'll start our fire and life safety visits by our public education team. And so those will go on throughout the year. In closing, I just want to reiterate that we are dedicated, not just during Fire Prevention Week, but throughout the year, in making sure that the incidence of home fires and injuries is reduced through comprehensive protection, prevention, and education. Thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you, Chief. Alderman Fisk?
Chief, I just wanted to thank you and the fire department for the drive-by notice of the home fire in my ward on Ridge Avenue in the past week, and an alert firefighter noticed smoke coming out of a building that was empty, and it certainly could have traveled to the surrounding buildings, and it didn't because of that observant person. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for the kind comments. That was Captain Tony E. and Engine Company 23, where they noticed the smell of smoke, actually got out of their fire apparatus and walked up and down Ridge Avenue until they discovered that home. The great thing was, I think they discovered it at a very early stage. If it would have gone on, given the time of night, it could have been much, much worse. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Good evening.
Thank you, Chief Scott. And funny story to that. Because this meeting ran so late, and that was last Monday night, we literally walked out of here at like 12:30 a.m. after our executive session, and there were all these neighbors out there, and Alderman Wilson, City Manager Bobkowitz, and I went to the fire, and people were like, oh my God, the mayor and the city manager and the alderman are out here? That's the kind of service you can expect here in Evanston. All right. So, Alderman or City Manager, any other announcements?
One other, and we'll come back to this another evening. We've been fortunate to win 2 national awards for some of our community outreach efforts, and we'll talk more about those at a future meeting. And that's all I have.
Terrific. City Clerk, do you have any communications?
Yes, just 2 very short communications. One is the alderman will notice in front of them are T-shirts, Evanston Votes. Tomorrow is National Voter Registration Day, and the Evanston Clerk's Office has partnered with a number of organizations, both here locally with the League of Women Voters and VPAC and NAACP, as well as regionally with the Cook County Clerk's Office, Common Cause, Chicago Votes, the Just Democracy Coalition, a number of others to register voters tomorrow on National Voter Registration Day, and this is the beginning of what will be a long campaign to increase voter awareness and participation in our local elections here. And the theme of the campaign is Evanston actually has extremely high voter turnout when compared to cities of a comparable size and cities in the region, and we want to highlight the fact that Evanston has such high voter turnout and let folks know that they can join the party and do what everyone else is doing and get out and vote on Election Day. And so these T-shirts, tomorrow you will be able to register to vote at the library downtown or at the main Dempster location. At train stops, there will be volunteers out wearing these shirts. You can come to the clerk's office anytime between 8:30 a.m. and 7 p.m. And you can also, of course, just go online and register to vote. You can Google Illinois OVA, which is online voter registration application, and register there as well. And you can also come pick up a T-shirt if you'd like one, if you're going to be volunteering and getting folks registered tomorrow. Also, I just want to make an announcement that the clerk's office has hired our first permanent deputy clerk in Eduardo Gomez, and he will be starting October 9th, and we're very excited to have him on.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Terrific. Well, thank you, Clerk Reed. Okay, we're going to now move into public comment. We have 30 people that have signed up for public comment tonight. As you guys know, the rules that are set up is we have 45 minutes for public comment. We divide the... What's that? 30 people, 45 minutes. Okay, 30 people, 45 minutes. Doing the math really quickly, that means we're going to keep public comment to a minute 30 or less. Okay, I can't stress enough how respectful we need to be of one another who's getting up to give public comment, as well as the folks up here at this dais, many of whom have been here since 6 p.m. tonight and or 5:30, even before, and many of you have as well. So I know we have important business to do tonight. We have a lot on the agenda, so I do ask that everybody be respectful. I will give you a nudge if you're approaching that minute 30, and expect that you'll just wrap it up quickly if I have to give you the nudge. All right, so here we go. The first three speakers that we'll have is, the first one is Rodney Green, then Joan Hickman, and then Marta Hartman. As I always say, I apologize if I mispronounce someone's name up here. If you got up there, if you could pronounce your name, we'll get it correct for the minutes. Thank you. Mr. Green.
Rodney Green. Also, Joan Hickman has given me her minute and a half. I'm going to speak on SP2. I see here that the SP2 talks about the authorization and budget allocation for hiring special legal counsel for the city clerk. Here, City Clerk Reed is requesting that the city council authorize him to retain special legal counsel to advise his office on matters related to duties and functions of the office, as well as allocate funds for such services. My thing here is, why in the world would the city council authorize a clerk to hire special legal services to advise him what the duties of the clerk are in Evanston? It does not take a rocket scientist to know the duties and responsibilities of the clerk. All you have to do is look in the city code, Chapter 7, Section 1-7-2, with the exception of letter G, because we no longer have a township, so it's not a township clerk, and also letter L, which is city collector, which the city clerk has never been in Evanston. It is the responsibility of this council to abide by the laws and ethical conduct that you all swear to during your swearing-in ceremonies. What's next? Well, the ball is in your park. What are you going to do? Are you going to allow Chicago political tactics to now become the norm for Evanston? I truly hope that this does not happen, or to allow this clerk to manipulate you into doing what he wants to avoid following the rules and ethical conduct that is in the city code. So I hope that you take this in consideration and do not allow this SP2 to be approved for tonight. I will keep keeping my eyes on everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Okay, so next speaker will be Mitra Hartman, and then Paul Mark Wallace, and then Ray Friedman.
Good evening. My name is Mitra Hartman. I live in the 9th Ward. I spoke at the September 6th Human Services Committee meeting to express my concerns about the Beatty case and the associated police investigation. At that meeting, I asked 18 questions. You should have them in front of you. The first 6 ask for increased clarity about the investigative process. The next 11 ask specifics about the Beatty case. And the last question asks what steps the city plans to take to ensure that the issues are made clear to the public. It's now been nearly 3 weeks, and the city has not answered any of the questions to my knowledge. The city has made no public statement. I understand that the city may not be able to answer the 11 questions specifically about the Beatty case, but because the investigation is still open. But the public has the right to know now the answers to the first 6 questions, and the city needs to make a public statement about the facts of the case because there's a lot of misinformation circulating. The first 6 questions should be easy to answer. They're purely procedural. The city doesn't look good if it can't explain the investigative stages to the public. At best, it looks like the city doesn't know what it's doing, and at worst, it looks like the city is hiding something. So I emphatically repeat my request to make a public written statement that answers these questions and clarifies for the public the issues that are being investigated. When I finish talking in a few moments, there'll be about 20 seconds remaining to my allotted time I'm going to ask you to answer one question.
You've got 10 seconds.
10. Here's the question. You got 5 seconds to answer. How is community input being used, if at all, during the investigation?
Great, thank you. Okay, next speaker is Paul Mark Wallace, and then Ray Friedman, and then Darlene Cannon.
Good evening, good morning, wherever we are. I'm Paul Mark Wallace, born and raised in Evanston. I grew up on Pittner and Dempster in Evanston. Currently live in the second ward now, and my 80-year-old mother still lives in our house right across the street from the Howe project. I'm not really here to bash Howe, but I'm very concerned about how we are allowing such a monstrosity of a overwhelming property in a single-family townhouse neighborhood. I spoke with the commissioners meeting a few weeks back. I didn't get my thoughts together, but the more research I did, the more unfortunate the project is. $550,000 should really be spent on Evanston residents today. And why we don't have a group like Howe in Evanston, and if we do, why aren't we using that money for them? There's a young lady here who was homeless, who's been trying to live in Evanston forever. So the Howe project has nothing to do with Evanston residents. It will be 5 to 10 years before one Evanstonian gets a chance to live there. And it will be an unfortunate scenario if someone like myself would need to live there at that time. But there are many issues that I have on my list that I can't say all tonight, so I wanted to make sure I could submit this in writing and get a formal response similar to the young lady.
Thank you.
So my main concern is that
we're at 10 City. We're at it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, my last comment is, and I'm gone. We need to work a little harder internally here at Evanston. You know, we need a little bit more color in the housing department. We need people who are really diverse. We need to work hard to be diverse. We're very intelligent in Evanston. We love to say we're diverse. I don't think we're really working hard enough. And in the spirit of the United States right now, we need that. But it's unfortunate that Howe was even able to get as far as they did in a single-family neighborhood. I have an 80-year-old mother shaking and asked me to sell her property.
Thank
so
you.
That's bad.
Thank you. Next speaker is Ray Friedman, then Darlene Cannon, then Betty Esther.
Good evening once again, City Council, Mayor Haggerty. Well, I must say this has been a very educational past 6 months for us here in the Second Ward. We learned 6 months ago that a group called Howe proposed to build a 16-unit building geared toward women and children. We were told that Howe would work to ensure that the housing development serves existing need for local affordable housing, prioritizing current Evanston residents as tenants. Then we learned that the applicants for the 16 units would come from a list provided by Regional Housing Initiative and covers Cook, DuPage, Lake, and McHenry counties, as well as Chicago, Joliet, Oak Park, and Waukegan. We then learned that having an Evanston resident chosen as a tenant for the 16-unit building is not very likely. I would like to thank once again Mayor Haggerty for meeting with me and Devon Reed for following up with residents and sharing my letters with City Council. I also want to thank Daniel Biss, Robin Gable, and Larry Suffredin for meeting with us to get our input before meeting with Howe to discuss this project back in August. We all received a very nice thank you letter from Senator Biss, State Rep. Gable, and Cook County Commissioner Suffredin, who states again that Ms. Shawver is committed to work to ensure that the housing development serves the existing need for local affordable housing, prioritizing current Evanston tenants as residents.
Thank you.
And again,
10
this
seconds,
is
10
not
seconds, right?
possible. Okay. I believe this boils down to two basic questions. Does the 16-unit building meet the guidelines set forth in your zoning and affordable housing ordinances? Number two, will the 16-unit building help Evanston residents, as was represented by Britt Shawver? We say the answer is no.
Thank you,
and
Ray.
why would we be helping to fund it?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. All right. I forgot to mention earlier, if you, in your public remarks, it's less than a minute 30, that's okay too. All right. All right. Darlene Cannon, then Betty Esther, then Dolores Holmes.
Good evening. I ask the City Council to reject the proposed Howe development in the Second Ward, as well as the allocation of $550,000 toward this third party in the name of affordable housing. Unfortunately, Evanston continues to be a highly segregated city. The proposed placement of the Howe Public Supporting Housing Building will only further exacerbate this situation. The Fair Housing Act stipulates that not only should affordable housing be made available, but also that a municipality needs to be proactive in its attempt to diversify neighborhoods and desegregate existing ones. Our city government needs to recognize the need and its obligation to be proactive in finding housing solutions that respect the importance of the Fair Housing Act and our residents. This could mean, for example, that Howe is required to seek a new location that would support the promotion of diversity, even if it means downsizing the scale of the project. Perhaps it's time to look for an example to Northwest Evanston for such a placement. If public transportation is an issue that our city funds would be more wisely and humanely spent in establishing needed bus routes in Northwest Evanston, for example, rather than funding a third party to continue the legacy of segregated Evanston.
I need to wrap up in 10 seconds.
At the City of Evanston, we have sufficient staff to oversee and effectively administer the allocation of affordable housing funds directly towards the purchasing of subsidizing of homes for our low-income residents. We should not be spending our much-needed affordable housing dollars in part fund the infrastructure of a third-party organization. Our low-income residents will get a much bigger bang for their affordable housing bucks.
Thank you, Darlene.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Betty Esther, then Dolores Holmes, then Glenn Medeja.
Okay, the state representative met with this group, Biz, Robin Gable, and also Cook County Commissioner. They called to meet with the neighbors because they had some questions and concern. That was due to a letter that the neighbors had sent to Ida in addressing what they had sent back to them when they did a FOIA. One of the things was how they characterized the neighborhood. The neighborhood is considered a low-income area. It's a CDBG area. In CDBG areas, that means over 51% of the people there are considered low income. One of the other things that they stressed to these elected officials was the different tests like engineering, soil, and the blocks. Earlier tonight, the staff person talked about that they were supposed to get and receive the soil sample, but they hadn't got that report. What is wrong with the soil? Since that is a fill-in, as most of Evanston, they took rocks and things and they filled it in. Since that is an important test to be getting,
I need you to wrap it up in 10 seconds, Ms. Esther.
why are you approving funds without having all of the information in your hand? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Holmes, and then Glenn Medeja, and then looks like Dawn Wilson, but I don't think it's Dawn Wilson. Is it? Okay.
Mr. Mayor, City Manager, Council members, Clerk, I have several items, so I'm just going to bullet point them, so I'm assuming that you've read your packets and know what I'm referring to. So I'm first going to ask you to support the development of a real estate contract for the 1714, 1718 Chicago Avenue property. I'm going to ask that you deny a request of the $550,000 for the Affordable Housing Fund for 2215 Dempster, and mainly because it would not guarantee Evanston residents of affordable housing. I'm going to ask that you support the recommendations of the zoning board to deny the rezoning of 1829 Simpson from R3 to B1 zoning. And the biggest reason I'm asking for that is because we know what zoning changes do to certain areas. And in this time, in particular time in our country and in our community, we just have to be real conscious of that. I'm going to ask you to support from the Rules Committee the formation of the Equity and Empowerment Commission. And finally, can someone, and I'm not sure if it's you, Mr. Mayor, or you, Mr. City Manager, to inform Mr. Risky the results of the Ethics Board regarding the ethics file that was a complaint that was filed on me. Not sure what he needs to know other than what's already been stated. I'm confused because since we don't do Southern strange fruit anymore, I'm not sure what he's looking for. So I would appreciate if someone would take care of that. I don't like sitting at home and hearing my name being put up here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Holmes. Okay, Glenn, then Don Wilson, then Drina Nicola.
Mr. Mayor, Alderman, City Manager, the representatives of the Francis Willard Historical Association were encouraged by members of city government to meet with the developers of the library parking lot building to discuss our concerns, see if some accommodations could be made. Our concerns from the outset have been the building mass, site density, setback from our property line, protection of our property from wayward foot traffic, and the adverse effects that would result from these, such as shading, water drainage, and construction impacts. Basically, the results of those negotiations were that virtually all have been rejected, not with a discussion or a willingness to compromise, but with simple red line deletions from their attorney. The only concerns they appear to have to agree to is that there's no access between the front sidewalk and back alley on the north side. They're willing to work with us on appropriate landscaping on the north side. The most recent renderings in the packet for today still do not show either of those. Now, if the sale goes through, we're being asked to trust that the process will take care of some of these, such as having a shade study, that they will put in a fence, that work with me on landscaping and public foot traffic. We'll have to wait and see if we were heard, and we'll have to diligently check each document made public to see if these promises were kept. We did not speak publicly to these issues while we were negotiating in good faith. The Code of Ethics for the American Alliance of Museums states that working relationships are based on equity and mutual respect while preserving our historical resources for posterity. We hope to see a bit more of that from all participants in the future.
Thank you, Glenn. Okay, Alderman Wilson, and then Drina Nicola, then Tricia Conley.
Okay, and I'm here not on my own behalf, but on behalf of a constituent of mine, 10-year-old Alex, a student at Washington School, had to leave before he could speak, and he really wanted to say something. So he wrote this down for me, and I'm going to go ahead and read this for him. My name is Alex, and I'm a skateboarder, and I think that we should either build a skate park at Robert Crown or at James Park. I'm here today to make sure that that happens because I have to go all the way to Wilmette for the closest skate park, and I think a skate park will give us skateboarders a place to go. So whether it's at this park or another park, or we have to talk to Ridgeville, hopefully we can kind of keep that skateboarding thing open for Alex and his friends. So thank you.
Thank you, Alex. All right, Drina Nicola, Tricia Conley, and then Laurie Osborne.
Good evening, Mayor Haggerty and City Council. My name is Drina Nicola. I live in the 9th Ward, and I'm here to speak to the library parking lot and ask you that you do not approve the sale of that lot. As a business owner, a member of the Task Force for Age-Friendly Evanston Housing Subcommittee, and also a member of the Women's Club of Evanston, I urge you not to sell this land. We have very little land that we can hold on to. And I'm here specifically to ask if this land is to be sold or considered for development, that you consider it to be for senior housing. Housing for our firemen, our teachers, people who built this town. And this is a part of our action plan that you approved last summer, the Age-Friendly Action Plan. 8 aspects of the plan said we would look to build some housing. So I stand up, I listen to these meetings, I read the minutes, and I don't see that come up when we talk about our city-owned land. I also think it would be an appropriate building typology to put between the Francis Willard Home and the Women's Club of Evanston. So it would, I think it would address some of the other concerns our community has.
Thank you, Drina. We're at our minute 30. Thank you. Tricia Conley, then Laurie Osborne, then Bennett Johnson.
Good evening. My name is Tricia Conley. I live at 908 Greenwood in Evanston in the 4th Ward. I'm here tonight to ask you to please stop selling our public land in Evanston. Tonight we're battling once again to keep a precious and most prime piece of public land in the hands of Evastonians, the centrally located Evanston Library parking lot. It is really unsettling that you're actually considering selling off the most coveted piece of land in the heart of our city. Building a corporate office mall next to our central library, next to the fabric of our community, is in contradiction to what we say we are about in Evanston, and it is an environmental injustice. The centrally located parcel of land was designated in our 2009 and 2000 plans to become a space of public activity. In fact, in one plan even referred to creating a public theme space around women in conjunction with the Women's Club and other surrounding historical buildings. Disregarding this designation of a public space and instead selling it off to a developer to create an anonymous office building requires numerous variances and shows once again the city's disregard for those communities that enjoy and rely on public spaces and their amenities in Evanston.
Thank you, Ms. Conley.
Thank you.
Okay, Laurie Osborne, then Bennett Johnson, then Dana Pearl.
Hello, everyone. I'm here tonight speaking as the incoming director of the Frances Willard House Museum and the current director of the Evanston Women's History Project. So you're going to hear a little bit of women's history and a little bit about the possibilities for the future at the site. As you may know, the Willard House and the WCTU site is one of the most significant women's history sites in our country, if not the world. Most communities would look at these and cherish them and be doing everything they can to ensure their future. We are fortunate to have this wonderful example in physical space that show Evanston's long commitment to women's empowerment locally and globally. I'm hoping you've all heard the news of the creation of the new Center for Women's History and Leadership at the WCTU site. This is an exciting development that gives Evanston a home not only for women's history, but the kind of forward-thinking heritage tourism that can bring visitors and growth to the community. Just yesterday, we welcomed more than 150 people to the site for Frances Willard's 178th birthday celebration, featuring Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky as our keynote speaker. We're looking forward to an equally important anniversary coming in just 2.5 years, the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage in the United States in August of 2020.
We have 10 more seconds.
Given all this, I would strongly encourage you to consider your vote tonight in light of these developments and plans. Instead of jeopardizing this historic space and its future, the city's leadership should instead be doing everything it can to promote and encourage it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next up is Bennett Johnson, Dana Pearl, and Janet Stile. Is Bennett Johnson here? If Bennett's not, let's go ahead, Dana, and then we'll go to Janet.
He was here earlier. Hi, I'm Dana Pearl. I call myself a townie. I've lived here for all but my junior high and high school years. I've been a political activist in Evanston since graduating Northwestern in 1980, and I've been in the business community as a member of the Evanston Chamber of Commerce for 25 years, recently retired, but joined the board of Kurt's Cafe in order to represent Kurt's through the business community in the chamber. I'm adamantly opposed to this building on the library parking lot for a lot of reasons, and I'm hearing even more tonight that are really moving me. But I gotta say, one of the things that I haven't heard considered is the fact that a lot of women will not park in parking garages. They want an open space where they feel safe. Women are mugged and attacked when they are in enclosed spaces, and that should be a consideration as well. I use this parking lot at least once a week because I have a regular appointment every Monday afternoon in the Carlson building, and it's the most convenient space to go. And usually there is no parking on the street around the Carlson building in a 2-block area. So I really hope you will consider the impact on women, not just because of the Women's Club and the Frances Willard houses, but also on our safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Janet Steidel, and then Sarah Shostak, and then Madeline Ducray.
Good evening, Mayor Haggerty and councilmen, women, and everybody. My name is Janet Steidel. I'm a resident of the 2nd Ward. I'm a registered interior designer in the state of Illinois and a historic preservationist. I hold masters in both of those fields. I've been in the building trade for 30 years. I'm a retired college professor of interior design, a career of 25 years. So now we have a conceptual site plan for the library parking lot building. That's great. Being able to fully review this project now, the building's incredible mass, its relationship to the neighboring properties, its minimal setbacks, and its interface with the alley have finally been made clear. But why wasn't this plan in the packet in April? Why wasn't it in the packet just 2 weeks ago? And how was the sale of this public land allowed to come up for city council votes 3 times without it? I doubt this was an oversight. The conceptual site plan existed months ago. Here is a dated copy that backs up that statement. You are voting on the sale of this public land based on this developer's plans for it. The argument that additional materials will come out in the plan development process falls short. Will this developer's application for that process be as incomplete as its materials have been for this one so far?
10 more seconds.
Yeah. Will the city finally require them to meet the same standard it requires other developers to do? A council vote to sell our land under these circumstances sends a pretty loud message that process and transparency do not matter today in the city of Evanston. Is that going to be your message here tonight? Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Okay. All right. Sarah Shostak, and then Madeline Ducray, and then Karen Courtwright.
Good evening. After what you've heard this evening, are you prepared to affirm that city ownership of this surface parking lot at the library is, quote, no longer necessary, appropriate, required, or in the best interest of the city of Evanston? And do you feel justified in further stating that the best interest of the city would be served by selling this property? Consider the facts to the contrary. The city may well need this land very soon. With 5 other development projects in various stages, there will be 1,000 new housing units in downtown. A new hotel is also proposed on the 1700 block of Sherman. Significant growth in the tax base is to be expected from these developments. Well, what will be the cumulative medium and long-term impact of this new density downtown? Empty space next to the library will be seen as a jewel. In its current incarnation as a parking lot or as the park envisioned in the downtown plan, this publicly owned land is a strategic asset in this time of growth. No other pending developments address revenue goals, and this is not the time for selling this public land.
10 more seconds,
The proposed
Sarah.
building is not appropriate, as you have heard. This is the city's land and the city's process. How can this building, so far from something brilliant, be the result? And there are pure process flaws in the way you've gone about this.
Thank you,
as
Sarah.
other speakers have mentioned. I hope you will vote no.
Thank you. Okay. Next up is Madeline Ducray, then Karen Courtwright, then Vicki Burke.
Hi, everyone, again. Okay, so listen carefully. I'm going to go through this real quick. There's about 60-some localities in the United States that chose not to enforce the federal law deportation of undocumented people, okay? Those sanctuary cities like Chicago and Evanston have passed policies that do not give the local police their backgrounds, give them the authority to check into their backgrounds, okay? The undocumented people. To me, this is simply what it means, and it is unfair. The former mayor of Chicago, Harold Washington, gave an executive order to make this possible. Sanctuary city, okay? Black man, and I'm a black woman, and I hate no one. But let me tell you something. Over 32 years have passed The undocumented people is still undocumented. You people up here can do something. Don Wilson, Alderman Don Wilson, you told me the other day, they're standing right back there. We need to do something, okay? You need to say we need to stick something, make you all do what you have to do. Did you not say that? Over 32 years.
Different context, to be clear.
Excuse me.
Alderman Wilson, it's everybody's opportunity. You got 10
Okay.
more seconds now.
Okay, 10 more seconds, you better take off those
I'll
ones,
give you
okay?
15 seconds.
I'm
15
a
seconds.
public speaker, okay? You all are up here to listen to us. We are the people here. If you don't listen to us, what the heck you doing up here? If you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen, all right?
Thank you.
Now, let me tell
Thank you,
something. I'm not
Madeline. We're
finished.
at Madeline. We have to be respectful of everybody else that wants to get up here. And everyone else that wants to get up here and speak too.
Mayor.
Ma'am, we need to be respectful of everybody up here at the dais and everybody out there.
Is the rules, is he supposed to speak when I'm speaking? Yes or no?
This is your opportunity to speak. And
All right, we're almost finished.
You've had a minute 30. You got 10 more seconds.
All I'm saying is stop lying to us, okay? You are lying to us about the undocumented people coming here taking our jobs. Yes, they are. Stop lying to us about the gangs, the Latino gangs and Russian gangs in here, okay? Stop lying to us about that because they are.
Thank you. Thank you.
They
Mr.
are.
Thank
and
you.
I want you to do something about it, just like you pass certain things here. Pass some laws. Pass them in Illinois to get the people to become citizens. You
Mr.
have
Cray,
the power.
It's
Thank
Ms.
you very much.
Courtwright's turn. Thank you.
And Mr. Katz, I don't blame you for nothing.
All right.
Fifth Ward
Mrs. All right. Karen, Ms. Courtwright.
Hi. Good evening.
Good evening.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Clerk, City Council, Mr. City Manager. I just want to make a couple of quick statements and move this along. Tonight, there's a special item, SP1, regarding some changes to the posting of FOIA requests and FOIA responses. And I had some concern when I read this in the packet or in the agenda last week and was happy to have a conversation with Alderman Wilson about it. And I think that there are some needs to protect people's information, although it may have redactions from being associated with a request where a name is provided. And I think that that's a very reasonable and an important change to make. I think I'll stop there.
Thank you.
It's a long night.
Thank you. It is a long night. Yes. All right. Vicki Burke, then Dennis Pierce, then I can't read the writing. It may Junad. I don't know if you signed up. Okay.
Hi. Good evening. I was supposed to read a statement from Sarah Ward, who's the president of the WCTU, which I'm going to have to cut short. But I'm Vicki Burke, and I'm the new president of the Board of Trustees of the Center for Women's History and Leadership. Sarah wanted me to communicate to all of you personally that the WCTU has always been and continues to oppose the development of the parking lot. That she had instructed myself and Mr. Medea to be open and available to any and all conversations with the city and the developers, but to never represent the WCTU any other way but in opposition, which I believe we have. She said, having lived in Evanston in the 1960s, she has fond memories of a beautiful historic Evanston. She also remembers when the condo building at the corner of Clerk and Chicago Avenue was erected and the house north of the Willard House was knocked off its foundation. So she remains concerned about the short and long-term impact of an 11-story building being built 5 feet from the southern border of the lot. And she's concerned about the additional traffic dangers, the patrons of the library, and the business neighbors on Church Street being accommodated during construction. She appreciates...
10 more seconds.
Okay. She appreciates those city officials that have come out for a visit, and she's very happy that an arrangement has been made after 2 years of negotiations to allow for the center to open. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Dennis Pierce, then Janad Rizki, then Pete Giangreco.
Good evening. Dennis Pierce, resident of Evanston, 46 years. I'm in the 4th Ward. I rise to support the Howe development for 16 affordable housing units at the corner of Dempster and Pittner. The city's being asked to support that project at $550,000. That comes to $34,000 per unit. To get 1 unit of affordable housing for $34,000, you get 16 units for $550,000. Secondly, city data shows that there are 983 units of affordable housing in the city. The average per census tract is 54 units per census tract. This particular census tract has 6 units only of affordable housing. It can well afford to have 16 more units. Thank you.
Thank you. Janad Rizki, then Pete Jean Greco, then Carolyn Murray.
I thought it was rather amusing at AP&W. One of the members suggested we need to kill skunks in Evanston, but we do really have some very real issues here. Mr. Bobkowitz has suggested quite a few times we pay as we go on capital and not use geo bonds. But tonight I found it interesting that we're going to buy police cameras with geo bonds. And just to understand, I'm not against the cameras. That's not the issue. Why would we use basically long-term financing to purchase cameras that are going to last 5 years? Are we in that much trouble here that we really don't have the expense money to really pay for this? I mean, those items are going to last only 5 years, and maybe we're going to be paying for them for what, 15 more possibly, whatever those terms of the geo bonds are, just so people understand. You're not buying a car with a 30-year mortgage. That's what we're doing here, basically. Also, we were promised at another meeting recently on Wednesday we were going to get into complete accounting of the city worker cost on the recyclables. It appears tonight that was blown off by Mr. Stonebeck. And finally, the water deal with Skokie is really, really interesting. I keep on pointing this out. We were told we were going to basically use this one contract. Now we are entering in it with a different contract to Skokie. I keep on telling you, and Mayor Haggerty, you were the one in your campaign that said you were going to look into all this. You're not doing that. The truth of the matter is this is a mess. I keep on saying it. I think it's a bigger mess than the pensions, and nobody wants to deal with it because once you deal with it, you'll have to admit what's wrong. Thank you.
Thank you.
One last thing. I want the city to basically tell me if you have an ethics hearing and the ethics committee gives a result, where does it go? It just sits? Where does it go? I understood it went to the council.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Pete Jean Greco, or you're not Pete Jean Greco? Okay.
All right. So I'm not Pete Jean Greco. I'm Raj Gate. I'm treasurer of the Friends of Robert Crown. Pete had to leave because he's actually playing hockey right now. So there are other people awake in Evanston right now, but they're actually exercising. So first of all, the Friends of Robert Crown would like to thank the over 300 families and local organizations that have given significant amounts of money. We are now $536,000 away from a $10 million goal that we set. We have over $2 million in pending requests to families and organizations that are considering naming rights gifts. The original study that was done regarding fundraising suggested we could raise between $3 and $5 million. We are going to hit $10 million hopefully in the next month. We intend to go well beyond that in the coming year and are setting new targets as we speak. Most of these gifts have been raised without an actual design. Tonight we hope that you'll see the actual design, and with an actual design we hope that we can raise significantly more amounts of money. We have listened to our community. This design process has been extensive, has involved numerous community meetings, and we've taken community input, and the design you see tonight will be a product of that input. We're excited for the next phase of our fundraising, and we look forward to working with the city going forward.
All right. Thank you, Raj. Next up is Carolyn Murray, then Carla Eason, then Jackie Prince. Okay, is Carolyn Murray here? All right. If Carolyn Murray's not here, let me keep going, Kira, and I'll slide you in her spot if she doesn't show up, okay, at the end. Okay, so that's Carolyn Murray. How about Carla Eason? Is Carla here? Okay, maybe we got 2 no-shows. Jackie Prince? All right.
Hello, my name is Jackie Prince, and I am following up on the comments that I had at the last meeting. We were supposed to get 1 minute and 30 seconds, and mine seemed to have gone pretty fast because I timed the next person who was speaking about the restaurant, and he got 3 minutes.
I do my best. I do make, I try to do my best to keep people to a minute 30, so
Okay.
I apologize
just
if
want
I've let
everybody to
people
be-
go over.
Actually, it wasn't you. It was Alderman Rainey.
Okay, but we all try to do our best
Okay.
up here when we're.
So let me make
Okay,
a
so
couple of bullet points since I used up time saying that.
Yes, you did.
I wanted people to know that Northwestern University, which is the college I went to, is arresting blacks for criminal trespass at an alarming rate. I have been in the courts pretty much every month since 2016, and every person that comes up for criminal trespass are black people, including people who are former students and people who are listed in their temp pool. So I would like Evanston to keep an eye on that because EPD is also used to assist in those arrests. I also wanted to say that when you're considering affordable housing, please make sure that it's really affordable housing for people who cannot afford the normal rates. The housing that I have been offered has been excessive, in excess of $1,400. If you don't have the $1,400, $1,500, $1,600, and you pass those over, then you will be kicked off the list. I have been on the waiting list for housing through the central processing systems that you go through in Chicago. When my name came up, they said they'll contact me in a couple of weeks, and I was passed over.
Thank you. We've given you a minute. I'll
One
give
more
you 2
comment.
minutes.
Connections for the Homeless really is not representing the homeless people and helping them get reconnected in housing.
Okay.
And I would like somebody to take a look at them and oversee them a little bit more. And General Assistance has refused to let me get on General Assistance, saying I'm not a resident. The state says that I am a resident if I'm here 30 days or more without the intent to leave, but I've been here since I was 7 or 9 years old. So if I'm not a resident, who is? Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Okay, we've got Jennifer Crosby, John Gibson, and then Anya Dudzik. Do we have Jennifer?
Hi, good evening. I'm here to talk about the affordable housing that is proposed to be put on Pittner and Dempster. I have real concerns that the city of Evanston continues to be in a pattern where they put affordable housing in certain areas, mainly the areas that were legally segregated by race in this city. And I do not believe it's okay to put another affordable housing or low-income housing unit in either the north part of the 2nd Ward or in the 5th Ward. Find another place. This segregation has to stop. Earlier I heard people say, well, it's about people. That's right. The people at Howe deserve to be housed in an integrated area, not segregated to the same areas that have already a disproportionate amount of low-income people and affordable housing. It's not morally right. You can make a stand to make a change and make it find another ward, find another place. It'll be more expensive, but it's probably the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you. John Gibson, then Anya Dudzik, and then having trouble reading the name here, Jamin Engelman? Okay.
I'm not John Gibson.
There's John Gibson in the room.
He had to be in Maryville, Indiana at 5 in the morning.
Okay, so you're subbing for John, just like we had Raj sub for Pete. Okay, go ahead.
He contacted me through a longtime resident Evanston, a friend of mine named Reggie Florimo, and he is a local 150 operator who opened up a demo company. He's looking to about this project. He lives in the 5th Ward, I believe, and he wanted to be here to support the project for local hiring and try to get hired on this project. So he contacted me through Reggie, and I've been in contact with him, and he's a very persevering guy. So I'm telling you, he's
He was here in
He was
support.
Thank you.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you. All right, Anya Dudzik, and then Jamin Engelman, and then Vanessa McCoy.
Hello. I'm almost afraid to say what I want to say after all the lynching that project and library lot was presented in that way. I wanted you to know that I have a master's degree in classical languages and I appreciate history, literature, architecture, tradition. I appreciate all of it. But yet, I was 28 when I came to this country with no money, hardly knowing any language, and I struggled. And I struggled in Poland as well, because I didn't have a father, and got all my education hard way. And then, in the middle of my life, I lost my husband very tragically and had to send my daughter to college on my own, and I succeeded. And I wanted to say, as much as I respect tradition, money is very important. Money is very important to people like me, to individual people, families, and to the cities. And this project, I really don't see any damage in it, because if we have, how could this lady with all those titles say that covered parking is less valuable when there is no snow, rain, and all the other things that we don't like on our cars and around them be worse. And I think that this project Evanston would benefit incredibly in so many ways. In one, Texas, then all
Anya,
those people.
You need to wrap up in 10 seconds.
Yeah, thank you. Money is important, as much as tradition, sometimes even more.
Thank you. Thank you. Jamin, and then Vanessa McCoy. So, Engelman, yes. Sorry, is it James? Why am I misreading this?
I'm sorry about my handwriting.
No worries.
I'm here to support the restaurant because I live on 24 Brown, Evanston, and we have 33 apartments. We have 33 people live in an apartment, and it's close by the restaurant, and it's be easy for these people in the wheelchairs to go to restaurants and eat. And change is good because, you see, I worked for Zenith for 29 years, and then when they went down, a friend of mine told me to come here, and so I came here to Evanston, and I've been living in that over the rainbow for 10 years, and I've been living there, and I enjoy Evanston very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, Vanessa McCoy, and then Kira Kelly will be the last.
Yes, hi. As I stated a couple of weeks ago at the last meeting, no one who has spoken or working on the proposed 16 too large building on the corner of Pittner and Dempster live close and will be impacted by the 16-unit too large building that's proposed to be built there. My mother and I, my mother is 87, we live diagonally across the street from the 16-unit too large building that's proposed to be built on the corner of Dempster and Pittner. I grew up on Fowler, just a block west of that corner, where my mom and dad had that home for over 50 years, and then my dad passed, and my mom and I bought the home on Pittner and Dempster over 8 years ago. But anyway, so I'm just here. My mom has been at all the other meetings, but when I asked her if she was coming tonight, she said no, because at the last meeting, it seemed like the decision had already been made and it would be a waste of her time. But I felt like I should still come to say once again that the 16-unit too large building is just too large for that corner for a number of reasons. And the other thing I wanted to say is that I've gone to all the meetings, and it seems very misleading how they were, how has presented that this building, who this building was going to be for. It doesn't seem like it's for Evanstonians, which was my original thought. It would help lower income Evanstonians. It doesn't seem like it's just for women and children, which is who their organization caters to, but I think you just only have to be low income. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. But so it just seems like it has been misleading, and so I'm asking that you not give over $500,000 to support this when it seems misleading. It's not going to serve who we would like for it to serve.
Thank you, Vanessa. Okay.
Oh, and it's too large, if I didn't say that.
Yeah, right. And lastly is Kira Kelly.
Hi. Quickly, I would just like to say that I am opposed to the sale of our public land for the library parking lot. And then I'm going to pivot to another topic, and that is a group called now the Evanstonians for Responsible Planning now represent more than 1,500 people to date who oppose the Albion project, as seen with the Change.org petition, which is still going strong. Many residents care immensely about this town and have thoroughly researched this Albion development and are very knowledgeable about it. Maybe as or more familiar with the specifics than some city council members or plan commissioners, you never know. Residents in this group include experts in areas I mentioned last meeting: zoning, architecture, engineering, et cetera. And others have taken time away from their families, hobbies, et cetera, to become very informed about the Albion proposal in Evanston's downtown. Since the beginning of the process, the Albion developers and city staff who are supporting them have been given a lot of dedicated time to make formal presentations to build their case. Meanwhile, experts and residents who oppose and have differing evaluations on Albion's data have been given only 2 minutes or sometimes 1 minute at public comment time to speak. As a group representing more than 1,500 citizens with experts particularly suited to evaluate a development proposal like the Albion, we as a group request time to make a formal presentation before the City Council and any city committee or commission that is deliberating the approval of the Albion. Let's put to rest the disheartening talk about this being a done deal. Let's ensure that City Council is provided with a comprehensive understanding of the proposal, not just what the developers are telling you, but listen to the Evanston experts as well who've really researched this.
Thank you,
I'll
Kira.
follow up with an official letter. Thank you.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, as always, for the passionate, positions that people have on so many different issues. These are tough issues, and I know we'll have a good conversation this evening as a City Council. Let's move into the special orders of business. We have several here. I'm going to ask Alderman Wilson if he will start us with SP1 and SP2.
Thank you, Mayor. With regard to SP1, this really relates to primarily the next request system that the city's been utilizing. So since January of 2016, we've had this system in place, and the general idea is that this is a supplement to the existing FOIA request process. And for information that is of benefit to the community, the FOIA requests and the responses could be posted, avoiding the duplication of unnecessary duplication of work, unnecessary duplication of other requests, et cetera. So if somebody was interested in looking up something, for example, the development that is being discussed, if there were a number of FOIA requests, somebody could go online, look those up, and see what the responses were, and get a lot of, hopefully, wealth of information. However, it was drawn to my attention recently, or I should say a couple of weeks ago, with regard to some information that I kind of inadvertently stumbled across. It was apparent that at least one juvenile and perhaps others were identified in the materials that were posted on the next request system. And the mayor and I had a conference with the city clerk and discussed the concerns. I guess it was my expectation that the juvenile name would be redacted and it wouldn't be an issue, but in looking at it later, it was still an issue. So I looked at the next request a little bit more closely, and I discovered that there were multiple sexual assault victims who had been identified by name posted on the system. And I requested on multiple occasions that the city clerk remove this information, remove the juvenile names, remove the sexual assault victims' names, and the city clerk's office declined to do that. There were a number of conversations and some correspondence, and it's my understanding that the city clerk is posting all FOIA requests, regardless of what the request says. So I don't think that they're being reviewed in any way whatsoever. In addition to the juvenile names and the assault victims, I'm very troubled because I don't think residents are aware that if you do a FOIA request, the request gets posted on this website. And if you do a FOIA request, the response might get posted. And you know, we're all about transparency and openness, but when you think about the context of what some people make FOIA requests in, for example, if someone's child had a couple of arrests and they wanted to expunge the records, if they did a FOIA request, identified their child, that FOIA request would then be on the website. These are, I just did some quick tries, but it seemed that they were easily found using Google searches. So now we have people who made simple requests for information about their personal histories, their past records, what have you. And now they are, if you Google their names, they pop up in a Google search saying, asking about the arrest report. And frankly, I find it horrifying. I'm deeply disturbed by it. The clerk's office has declined to take action to address it. I do think that the two of the assault victims' names were over the weekend were removed, but as of today, the juvenile name and possibly others were remaining on the website. So, in light of this, and this isn't what Evanston's about. We're not about shaming and humiliating people who are just simply trying to get information. If this is the way we're going to use this this supplemental system to subject people to, posting things on the internet, then I don't want to use it. I mean, I think there's a way to continue using this, but in the interim, until we have someone review the materials that have been posted to ensure that inappropriate material is not posted on this system, I don't think we should have it live and online. This would not change the responses to the FOIAs whatsoever, so FOIA requests would continue to be responded to, just as they always are. But to me, if you go in and you ask for a police record or something of that nature about yourself, or maybe even about somebody else, you should get the records. It should go to the person making the request. I don't think it's reasonable to, without the person's knowledge, post the request and post the response on the internet where it can be found in a Google search. It's outrageous, and I think we have to take immediate action to take it offline for the moment until we can purge any information that's on there.
Thank you, Alderman Wilson. Because this is dealing with the clerk's office, I would like all clerk read, and I think you may have one or two slides that you just wanted to give an overview, because obviously there is a different practice happening now with you as clerk than the prior clerk. Thank you.
First, I just want to extend that, Alderman Wilson, I share your concerns, and after we had our discussion, it's visible in the next request system that there's a log that is kept. I immediately removed the one case of where a sexual assault victim was named. Within the FOIA request that we received, there wasn't a mention of a sexual assault case, and so there was an error there. Moving forward, I do want to make sure that we give updates as to how the system has changed. Number one, we have the next request. We spoke with the next request team, and there is a feature that I am newly aware of. It's called embargoed request, and with that feature, request will not, moving forward, will not be publicly visible until 1 hour after it has been closed. And right now, the system is set to automatically publish any FOIA request that comes in as it comes in. So as someone fills out something online, anything you put in the next request box was set to automatically be public, and now we've changed it to embargoed, which will be released 1 hour after its closure. We also have a notice of public publishing of requests that is now on the next request system, so folks are even more clear that their request what's in the box will be made public. And unredacted records will only be released to verified requesters and to folks who have proven that they are, either directly related to the victim of a crime or the suspect or whatever it is. We will only release unredacted records to verified requesters. And if you can click the link there, Enith, thank you. And I want to show, the changes. So as you can see on the sidebar there is a bolded notice that says all records requests will be made public 1 hour after closure unless otherwise requested, and then all personal identifiers will be redacted. And if you scroll down a bit, also right there is the clerk's office's phone number, and you can call in and let us know if there's a request that you would not like to go public. And so this weekend, also on Friday, when this was moved to the agenda, I spent my weekend going through every single FOIA request since I've taken office, and even prior to that, that was assigned to the police department. We reviewed all of them, and any request that included someone's name has been removed publicly. Any request, there is one request, Don, that I found that met, the Alderman Wilson, and then that met with the sexual assault victim, and there's the other request mentioning a juvenile was of a case that I think the entire community knows about, where a 12-year-old was arrested while riding his bike downtown Evanston. If you can quickly also go to looking ahead, I think that we also have to look at a number of other things with FOIA. So changes have been made to address these issues, and I think as we move forward, I think we have to open up the discussion about FOIA. So I think we need to look at the formatting of released records. FOIA requests are released sometimes just by PDF, and I think in the 21st century, in 2017, the city can do a better job of releasing documents in in a format that is machine readable, so Excel format or a CSV format. If I also think that the council and many of us share this concern about the city not being in the business of embarrassing or shaming folks, and I think we need to look at other practices throughout the city to make sure that we're being consistent with those goals. I believe that the daily crime bulletin, we send out every single day a list of folks who have been arrested but not convicted. I think that we
Clerk Reed, I want to keep on the agenda item. So I think we're getting off board with some of the look ahead. So let's focus on that. I've got Alderman Nguyen and then Alderman Wilson.
Yes, Clerk Reed, could you talk a little bit more about what embargoed means? What does it mean when you say that the names are published an hour after it's closed? After what is closed, and when does that happen?
So after responsive documents are released, an hour after those documents are released to either the requester or publicly, an hour after that is when the request will go public.
So the requests still do end up publicly?
The hour delay is what creates the check to make sure that anything that needs to be redacted is redacted.
Okay, I'm confused. Okay, let's say, for instance, you're someone who decides they want, as Alderman Wilson says, you want to expunge your child's arrest record that had happened earlier. So if you make that request using your child's name, saying that you want to get a record of arrest, but what happens?
So the new system is that request will come to the clerk's office. It will not automatically, as was the system prior, it will not automatically be posted. It'll come directly to this office. We'll assign it to the appropriate department. And in the instance that someone requests a police report about their juvenile, it will not be made public.
No, but that.
How do you know that?
Hold on, though.
How do you know what?
Wait a minute. So let's say I type this in, and I'm asking for, let's say it's not a juvenile. Let's say I'm asking for my brother's DUI record, okay? I do have two brothers, but neither of them has a DUI. All right, okay. But, so I typed that in with one of my brother's names in it. Is there an option on this system that my request is never made public?
Right, and so, as I said, there's a notice there on the side that if you would like for your request to never be made public, you can reach out to the office. In the case that...
So I have to make a phone call to your office to do that? That's not acceptable.
So here, again, anything that is released will be released in a redacted form. So if you said your brother's name is John Doe in the request, John Doe will be removed from the request, and any documents that are released, John Doe's name will be removed from that as well.
But I don't like to have to make a phone call to say I don't want to have this go public and wait for someone to pick up the phone. No, I am all in favor of FOIA requests. I've made FOIA requests myself. I've responded to them. But I think most of us recognize that that there's anonymity in the fact that there are millions of public documents. But when someone makes a request for one of them and highlights it, and then it becomes easily searchable on the web, then that you've lost your privacy. And so I don't want to have to, if I'm making a FOIA request and I want it to not to be public at all, I don't want to have to call an office and wait for someone to make sure that it's not gone public somehow. There should be either some way on this system to make sure that never happens, or else we should take it down, because this is not required of us by law. Correct?
So what kinds of requests are you hoping never made
I don't want
public?
names. I mean, why? I mean, if let's say I'm doing research of some sort that on a member of my family, and I don't know what I'm going to find, I don't want my search to become on this next request list that someone can just scroll through and look. How do I mean?
And as I mentioned, that any request that comes in before going live, there's a check. There is now a check in place with the embargoed system. And any names, if you were to, again, like I said, and say that I want all DUI reports for John Doe, John Doe's name will be removed.
Okay. So Clerk Lee, I want to make sure the aldermen have an opportunity now.
I'm not satisfied.
So thank you, Alderman Nguyen. Alderman Wilson.
And thank you. And so the problem with it right now is that we don't know what people's circumstances are. And part of my frustration is that I drew it to your attention multiple times, and I thought it was getting the assault victims' names, and I thought the juveniles were going to get taken care of. And you made an affirmative decision to not do it. In fact, last Thursday I wrote to you and I said I renew my insistence this information be removed immediately. And instead of saying you would remove it, you sent me...
It had already been removed, Don. That
is not true. On Thursday,
I can show you in the
not been
FOIA
removed.
request log that it was.
I don't believe you removed it until the weekend. And in fact, I think that I don't think you removed it until a victim had to contact you and track you down and insist that it be removed.
And
which
that
was
is not the case,
a particularly outrageous situation. So your response to me on Thursday, September 21 at 1:34 p.m., was no juvenile law enforcement or court records were improperly released. Someone putting a name in the public FOIA system does not constitute a release of the record. I'm more than willing to discuss the matter in detail at public council meeting. So I put it on the agenda so we can have a public council meeting. But you made a specific choice not to take down the assault victims, and the juvenile's name is still there. It's still there right this minute. And that's not acceptable. There are other requests. I have no idea if they were assault victims. I have no idea if they're juveniles. I see people have made a simple request about a law enforcement thing, and if you Google their name now, that's one of the first things that you get in the Google result. So I'm sure they're going to love going for that job interview, and just because they made a FOIA request, now there's a crime that shows up in their Google history at the top on the front page. That is ridiculous. That's ridiculous. So I think we need to take this offline for the moment until someone can go through and check all of the records that have been put there, and then we can get it back online with some proper guidelines. I don't think we're going to be able to sort out the guidelines tonight. I think that's going to take more time. So I'd like this to be set on a meeting date where we can set some guidelines. And I'm just very frustrated, and I'm very, very disappointed. I'm extremely disappointed. This is not how we should be treating our residents, and that's not the purpose of providing information. It's not to harm our citizens. So,
thank you, Alderman Wilson. Alderman Fleming, and then Alderman Fisk.
Well, I think Alderman Wilson alluded to this. I was going to just try to move us along, being that it's 11:30, that we can decide if we're taking it offline. I would, hope and trust that the clerk is going in and removing what needs to be removed and redacting and taking down and what have you of the system. I think if we go to the removing, it needs to be for a window of time so that he can get the job done and it can get back up and function for the people of the city who might want to put in a FOIA request. I think the policy, I would like to see, well, I guess this is part 2, the law department brought in at some point, but I guess my concern with the policy is I do like the FOIA, whether it's online or paper or whatever we do, because I think we are in an age of transparency. People do expect to be able to see things. I don't think we should see things about our neighbors and such, but I think as public officials and dealing with public dollars, that information needs to be available. And so I don't want to take the system down and get lost in some committee with the policy. Meanwhile, we're making allocations of funds and we're, considering selling land and such, and I think people have a right to make sure that they can access our FOIA system in a timely manner.
I would like clarification on that, because I don't believe what's on the table is if we're taking this system down, that we're not going to fulfill FOIA requests to requesters. The history is that we fulfill FOIA requests to requesters. Okay. The change is that we now fulfill it to the requester and we open it up publicly to everyone. And that is what's being discussed up here, and that is the concern that's being raised. Okay. All right, Alderman Fisk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got a question for the city manager. Do we have, is the city clerk our FOIA officer? Do we have a FOIA officer?
Actually, I know the Corporation Council has looked at this issue, what is on the books, and Ms. Mason Cup is here. I'll let her answer that question.
Good evening, Michelle Mason Cup. So the FOIA statute indicates that you can designate a FOIA officer. The FOIA statute does not mandate that the FOIA officer is the city clerk or the city manager. It doesn't indicate that. Basically, the corporate authorities can designate one or multiple FOIA officers. So that is your role. And under the city code, the city clerk is not the FOIA officer. And under the Illinois Municipal Code, it's the same thing. The city clerk is not the FOIA officer. So it's really your role to designate the FOIA officer.
And Ms. Mason Cup, what previous action has the Evanston City Council taken to designate a FOIA officer?
Rodney Green was designated the FOIA officer, but that was your choice.
Okay, thank you.
Then, Mr. Mayor, can I make a referral that
Yes.
to the Rules Committee, I guess, would be the appropriate place, that we name a FOIA officer?
So, City Manager, can we just add that to the Rules Committee agenda the next time we have a Rules Committee?
And Mr. Mayor, members of the council, there's a requested action on the agenda, so perhaps Alderman Wilson, at the conclusion of the discussion, can make that as part of the motion, whatever the motion is coming out of the discussion.
Okay. Alderman Reed, and then I'd like to see if we can move to a motion and move on our agenda.
Clerk Reed.
Clerk Reed, excuse me.
Not Alderman Reed. So, I think this, the changes have been made to the FOIA system that address everyone's concerns here. The embargoing, these changes have been made to address these concerns. We've gone through and already done an audit of all of the reports that have been released. We've removed reports that needed to be released, and we work together with a number of departments to fulfill requests. We work together with the police department to make sure that documents are properly redacted. The legal department is responsible for redacting, other sets of documents. I think the full gambit should be looked at and see where we can make improvements. I don't think the idea of taking FOIA away from an independently elected office that is accountable to no one but the people of Evanston is a responsible move. I think it should remain with an independently elected office that is accountable to the people of Evanston, and I think that's the route that we need to continue.
Okay. Alderman Wilson?
I would like to move that we instruct the city staff to make the next request system not visible from public view until the material that's on the site has been reviewed by, I'm going to suggest the law department, since they're probably most qualified to make the legal judgment, as well as scheduling this for consideration on the development and implementation of specific policies for the review in response to the FOIA request in conjunction with the next request system. And again, this does not in any way change our responsiveness to FOIAs. So FOIAs will continue to be processed. People will get their information. This will not affect that in any way. I think it's very important that we keep that going. But again, this kind of information just simply can't be published on a city website.
This will impact the responding to FOIAs. With the volume of FOIAs that we receive, the reason we went to next request was because of the large volume of FOIAs, and if we remove the next request system, it makes it, especially with the staffing levels that we have, extremely difficult to respond to FOIAs in a timely manner. I think that the sky is falling idea is somewhat overblown, and I think that the changes have been made. We can continue to make improvements. We can continue to have this discussion in public, but I do not believe that the next request system needs to be taken down.
Okay, but I thought the motion that was being forwarded was that there, from this point forward, if the council votes this, votes in support of this motion, that FOIA requests will go to the requester and not open to the public, not going to everyone. That's what is
the vast majority of FOIA requests are for documents that have public importance. So I am definitely in agreement and have already removed any police report that is publicly available, because if our goal is to make sure that we're not releasing police reports so folks don't show up in a Google search after they've expunged records, I completely agree with it. That's a value that I share, and I think and that change has been made. And again, this idea that the next request system needs to be completely taken down, I think, is overblown.
What's the motion?
Alderman Fisk?
Yeah, Alderman Wilson, did you feel comfortable?
Frankly, I didn't complete my motion. But,
okay, all right.
The other part was that we set a policy that police reports produced as part of an inquiry are to the requesting party only. Yeah, and that's it. Those three things.
Second.
I'm sorry.
So I'll restate it. I read them.
Could we also have the reference about the FOIA officer?
Sure.
Okay, so let me restate the motion. That the city staff, for the moment, remove the next request system from public view until the materials can be reviewed by the law department to ensure that there's no private information remaining. That we set a policy effective immediately that police reports produced as part of a FOIA inquiry are available only to the requesting party, and that we schedule this at the next Rules Committee meeting for the discussion towards developing and implementing specific policies for use of the next request system. I'd also like to make a reference, or adopt Alderman Fisk's reference. Restate it for me so I get it right. That that we designate a FOIA officer.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay.
No,
So-
I'm opposed.
Oh, you're opposed. So 8. Okay. So 7 to 1.
I'm opposed also. I'm unclear about what's happening.
Okay. So 7 to 2. 6 to 2, excuse me, because we only have 8 here. 6 to 2, SP1 passes. Okay, let's move on to SP2. authorization and budget allocation for hiring special legal counsel for the city clerk. Alderman Wilson, if you want to lead us in this.
Well, I think this is the clerk's request.
Oh, excuse me. Okay. City Clerk Reed.
I'd like to request that this come back to the next council meeting.
Okay.
Okay. So there's no action on it. So to hold it. So there's a request to hold.
He can't do that. But
I'll move that we hold it to the next council meeting.
And I'll second that hold. Okay. All right. SP2 is being held for the next meeting. Okay. SP3, City Manager.
I can still say good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. As you know, and it was on the Administration Public Works Committee agenda, several items regarding the Robert Crown Center. Marty Lyons, the Assistant City Manager, Chief Financial Officer, has been guiding this process, working with a council committee, working with a community group. He is here this evening with the Friends of the Robert Crown Center, with the architect, to give a presentation of where we're at. And then there are several items, Mr. Mayor, that were before the Administration and Public Works Committee that were forwarded to the council. So I think either at the conclusion of Mr. Lyons and group's presentations, we would need to go back to those items either at that point or have them pulled from the consent calendar. So we'll deal with that in a few minutes. Mr. Lyons, good evening.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Clerk Reed. As noted, we did the AMPW committee just forwarded on 4 items because we wanted to give you the chance to see the presentation. Obviously, we are clearly aware of the hour, so we will be very brief. I just would like to say that we have Mr. Woodhouse, Mr. Tanucci, and Mr. Foote from Woodhouse Tanucci Architects, PG and Greco, Dan Stein, and Dr. Raj Gate, who came up and spoke. And then we also have Laura Means-Akins and Michael Happ from CCS, in case there are any questions regarding that. As far as specific issues that need to be addressed tonight, it would be an order of priority after you've seen things is that we wish to get started on the construction manager RFP that was discussed at the committee level. And then after that, CCS would be the next step. Then, because we don't want to have a lapse in that service. And then after that, hiring of Woodhouse Tanucci for phase 2. So those are our first acceptance of the schematic design, then letting them move on to phase 2. And you need to see the schematic design before you can accept it. So that is the purpose of tonight. And I am going to move this along. I don't have enough room for that. Are you going to give me a keyboard? Oh, thank you. So I believe I just hit those things. One thing to make sure we understand, we are going to go through the schematic design, but we also, I think it's very important, the funding overview. It looks like it's much longer. It's much shorter. So with the funding design, those are the funding overview. That is the number of slides you're seeing right there, just 5. So we will get through that fairly quickly. I will not go through the project history. I've just talked about this, and I will bring Andy Tanucci up to go through the design information and a little bit about our public process. Mr. Tanucci. You just have to use the scroll on the mouse.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Marty.
Thank you, Dan. Somebody's building.
Mayor Haggerty, members of the City Council, City Manager, City Clerk, thank you so much for having us tonight. Despite the late hour, we're incredibly excited to be here presenting this to you. We've done a lot of work over the last many months on this and look forward to showing it to you. I'll move quickly through the slides. Not that quickly. As I mentioned, we're extremely excited to be here. Since the minute we received the RFP for the project, We felt that this project had the potential to be transformative to the city, to the neighborhood, to the community, to the way we think about community centers in our country. What you guys don't realize as well as we do is that community centers and recreation centers are actually fairly typical in communities. But to add a public library to a community center is actually not something that's done in this country. To our knowledge, there's really only one of them that we know about in the United States. And I think the potential for the library to add this aspect of knowledge to a center that's for the community and full of recreation creates the potential to weave community and culture, create a series of social overlaps and potentials that are actually quite profound, and offer this community in this park, which is an otherwise already incredible park full of activity, incredible potentials. So it's with that enthusiasm that we've embarked on this journey with the city staff. We've set ambitious goals for ourselves to create an iconic neighborhood landmark, one that is open and inviting for the entire community, a center that's totally accessible for all ages, for all abilities, to meet, to play, to learn, full of natural light connecting us to the environment and to the outdoors, with this integrated and identifiable library that really permeates the entire facility. At the center of it is this lobby space that we're calling a social or civic heart, this place where all these overlaps can occur, where in the lobby you don't know if you're in the library itself or if you're in the ice arena or in the preschool or in a community room. Everything flows through this space. We're going to endeavor to be as sustainable as possible. We're pursuing every opportunity, solar panels on the roof, rainwater collection, but also a facility that's truly something that's beloved by the community, so maintained well, easy to maintain, and something that's built so well that it'll last an extremely long time, longer than the facility that's there currently. None of this is possible, though, without the support of the community, without the support of you. And we've done so, we've embarked on this process in a completely open and public way. It's been the community, actually, that has designed this facility with us, hand in hand. Over 16 public meetings with various stakeholders, with various special groups. Obviously, the public themselves at 3 public meetings. It's been brought to you, the library board. The program, as many of you already know, I don't want to spend too much time on it, involves ice arenas, it involves a large gymnasium, many community rooms for art, for fitness, the library itself, all the necessary support space, and then all the outdoor parkland. It sums up into a facility, an indoor running track as well. It sums up into a facility that's roughly 130,000 square feet. We started first with the site, developing a series of site principles that would allow us to pick the best option. We looked at many different options and narrowed those options down here to get to what we thought was the best and most balanced site plan. The plan had to balance a 130,000 square foot facility that we tried to narrow down to 100,000 square feet on the site, because obviously natural parkland is incredibly valuable. The obvious need for parking in the facility, both the natural parkland as well as the recreational parkland as well. That sums up into a balance, something like this: a 700,000 square foot site, 100,000 square foot building footprint, 90,000 square feet dedicated to what we initially thought would be 215 cars, about 240,000 square feet of turf to extend the play season, and then 272,000 square feet dedicated to just open, loose, natural parkland. We then embarked on a more detailed pursuit, outdoor programming analysis with the city staff to understand what the true programming needs for the facility would be and how many fields would actually be required. We hired a parking consultant to explore parking and the parking need of the facility. This was an enormous consideration on our part, something that the neighbors and the public asked us to be mindful of. Through this study, we understood what the highest use times were and developed an understanding of the needs of the parking lot to be more like 225 cars. So that landed us here at the final proposed site plan. The total square footage here, still 700,000 square foot site. We weren't able to grow the site. But we were able to shrink the footprint of the building through some thoughtful planning and design, through careful programming and planning of the parking lot. That footprint reduced from 90,000 to 85,000 square feet. The turf area as well shrunk, and it all comes at the benefit of the natural parkland, which was able to increase overall square footage and percentage on the site. That parkland and site plan looks like this. Really, it all starts here, probably the southeast corner, the oldest portion of the site where there's a little bit of existing topography and a beautiful, beautiful stand of old elm trees. It was that sort of old part of the site that predates the existing Robert Crown that inspired us to develop this natural topography of the site as a kind of concept through the plan. So the plan includes just a few aspects I'll touch on. Some new site pathways that will ring the park, allowing for a great deal of, like I said, natural, unprogrammed parkland. The parking lot with permeable pavers to manage the water appropriately. We're really trying to push all modes of transit to the facility, so bike sharing facility. On that landscape, as I said, the natural topography of the site is going to shape the site to the southwest corner. We expect there to be some humps and bumps on the site, some trees there, protecting the building from the busy corner. In addition to the large-scale open spaces, also some smaller-scale spaces like an outdoor reading garden for the library, an outdoor play space for the preschool. And then those recreation spaces, both unprogrammed, loose spaces to the north and to the southeast under those beautiful trees, and then the obviously large play field in the center, which will look something like this. We then moved into the building design, developed the same set of principles, looked at the same set of options, brought them to the stakeholder groups and the public to think about what the various options would be, really thinking about just an organizational clarity and ultimately how to get that 130,000 square foot program down to 100,000 square feet. Our big move was to take the gymnasium and actually raise it up above to the second floor, taking a large chunk of meaningful square footage off of that important site and moving it upstairs, allowing it to become a bit of a billboard to the community, and we'll show you some images of that. The library will face the street to be as well visible right there at the entry of the facility. That overhanging gym, the gym up on the second floor is actually going to create a large overhang that will create a sheltered space so that in inclement weather there'll be a place to seek refuge under that overhang, but it'll also just be a very clearly identified entry and front door to the facility. This is just a floor plan, so I'll just give you a brief tour of that facility. Here's the overhang identified there on the first floor. This plan is the second floor, so you can see the gym upstairs here. You'll enter into the main lobby space in yellow, that center social heart, where from there you'll be able to feel like you're in the library or directly adjacent to. You'll be able to see into the ice arenas, see through to that protected preschool area, with the multi-purpose rooms kind of confettied around the facility. So that entry lobby, as you move in, looks something like this, looking straight through it, so an incredible amount of transparency into the space, obviously an incredible amount of natural light, like we've mentioned. Looking through it, you'll see to the library to the south. If we walked directly to that glass and turned around and looked back towards the entry, you'd be looking back at the gymnasium up above you. You'd be looking back at the entry out to the parkland here with the library on your right, the large ceremonial stair heading up to the second floor on your left. Characteristics of the space: large, open, bright, inviting. That dynamic social space that we're talking about, where all that overlap occurs, connected to the exterior on every trajectory. The library itself, again, from the lobby, directly open to, with all that programming extending out into the lobby itself. Once inside, looking back towards the lobby here, with the circulation desk to the right, the reading court out the windows to the left. And then further into the library, looking back, that kind of incredible overlap and connection where you can be in the library, looking back to the lobby and to the gymnasium above, with even a view to the gymnasium perhaps, being in the library but undisturbed by the activities of the gym overhead. Again, open, bright, airy, but also not just gigantic, full of plenty of smaller spaces for people to meet casually and for all kinds of activities that need to take place in the library, like training, meetings, kids' place, at a smaller scale. The multipurpose rooms, as I mentioned, confettied throughout the facility on the first and second floor, open to the community, dedicated to art, dedicated to fitness, dedicated to gathering. The preschool, each room, 4 rooms with their own restroom and storage space, will allow it to be a certified preschool. Separate from the rest of the facility so we can maintain the necessary security for the children with access to the outdoors and tons of access to natural light. Characteristics, again, demonstrated here in these views. The ice arenas obviously occupy a large amount of square footage of the facility. They're mainly shaped by their structure, their long span structure, but one of the things that we'll do in this design to differentiate, again, is bring natural light into them, something that's rather uncharacteristic in facilities such as this, giving the arenas an incredible amount of natural light, a real different kind of feeling, open area as well with the running track above. Here's a view of those. Looking back towards the gymnasium and the lobby, again, from every space inside the facility, we hope you'll be able to look through that space to another space, reminding you of that kind of connectedness you have to the community. The gym itself, upstairs here, ice arena on your left, overlooking the lobby down to your right. And then some just images of the exterior of the facility, the massing with Main, the angled street on the right hand and Dodge on the left. You see the overhang here of the gymnasium, overhanging the entry, the library here in orange, forming that little protected reading garden and courtyard with the trees on the corner, and the ice arenas behind. A view from Main, looking northwest at the front entry. That activity up above, that gymnasium, really being a billboard of the facility to the community, sort of announcing the activity within. So from this location, being able to look in at a meeting room where meetings would be taking place, the public library here, the gymnasium above, and people running on the running track, as well as obviously seeing all the activity on the fields. Slightly closer view, that large overhang to provide that shelter and protection. Looking up at the gymnasium. From Main and Dodge, the facility steps down, becomes a little bit smaller in scale. You can see the library and the preschools with that little bit of topography and trees in the foreground. And then here, a slightly further developed rendering from the east, looking right at the front door. This kind of primary LA connection between Washington School and the facility. That was another interest of the public, to maintain that connection with the fields to the right. So with that, I'll pass it back to Marty and only just say that right now we're here at the end of the schematic design, asking for your approval tonight, hoping to move in design development to finalize the design and move forward with construction documents, with hope that we could be into construction next summer with an opening at the end of 2019. Thank you so much.
Again, if, questions I know might be a little bit sparse this evening, but we will have this put on the website with a link for everyone to be able to see, and then you can follow up with any specific questions. Really important to note that all of those designs, all the materials, things of that nature, still subject to your review, still subject to how we will design it. It's meant to show the massing and the size of the facility, not necessarily whether it's a certain color or a certain anything in particular. Those are all things that come about through the construction drawings and the actual work with the construction manager, so that we get all the way down to that level. So we will still have more meetings to talk with residents as we define things more clearly. So I'm going to jump to a part of it that we have just now come forward with, because we've had all these meetings with the public about what they'd like to see in this center. So I'm going to make sure I go in the right direction. So fundraising, $9.4 million to date, and as was earlier noted from Friends of Robert Crown, a new goal of $15 million. And when you saw that schedule, there's a year before the goal of having a shovel in the ground. Then there's another year for staying ahead of the construction. So there is time to raise. In 18 months, 10 million was raised. If in 24 months, another 5 million is raised, that is a fantastic goal. I'll get the hang of it. So it was difficult to get the larger spreadsheets down into this, but I think it's something that you can take away from this process. What we're going to talk about is the construction. In any one of these projects, you'll have a construction project management tool to show what's coming in, what's going out. Then we're going to talk a little bit about maintenance and debt to make sure you have an overall picture. So what's really important here is you see the $15 million raised. I think what's important to note is that not all of what is going to be raised will all flow in by 2020. We have some folks that have done 5-year pledges. So in that respect, we'll have some short-term borrowing that will only come into play when we have people who've already shown that they've been giving money for 2 to 3 years, and it will just keep coming in over the next 2 years after that. So looking at that, you have 34,500,000 identified, and it's important to note that the timing of the revenues, we wouldn't issue bonds until we need them for the construction. We are looking and asking the council to consider that the parking fund pay for the parking lot, and that also we will have more than $1 million, probably closer to $2 to $3 million in site work. Site work means we're going to make this a very well-drained site. Everything will be on-site, underground stormwater. That the sewer fund also may be seen as a source, and if you know the history of our sewer fund, we've gone from over $190 million in debt down to about $50 million in debt to pay off all of our sewer bonds. Those have gotten much more manageable as far as our ongoing payments within the sewer fund, and we've been slowly reducing the sewer rate as we modify the water rate. In any event, that is something to be considered as we move through this. So $34,500,000. However, that schematic design went from $30 million originally to $40 to $46 million. I'll go right into where did the cost increases come from. One of the largest is we originally, if you look back at the 2013 models, we were at 110,000 square feet. We're at 135,000 square feet. At $230 a square foot, right there, it brings us up. But I do want to point out I use this program to show $40 million over that time frame, spending those dollars to give you something to look at, that at 34.5 and a $40 million project, we have a lot of projects where we embark on them with funding where we know that there's still going to be issues. We're at about 85% funding with some commitments to continue to raise funds, and I want the council to definitely understand that inside the funding, going back to capital construction, bond proceeds tax abated refers to the new center making more money and being able to pay some of the debt from increased revenues from the center, and it would not be tax funded bonds, but it would still be general obligation bonds paid by revenues in the center. I'm going the right way here. So where did the cost increases come from? Construction cost inflation just from 2013 to now, almost $5 million, 25,000 square feet, another $5.7 million. Fundraising is not something we contemplated at this level when we first gave the $30 million number, so that's $750,000. And better identification of costs as we hired Woodhouse Tanucci on what our total costs per square foot. But we have tried to stay at what I will say is a very reasonable per square foot price tag. One of the things that I don't want anyone to consider is that this is not an expensive building on a square footage basis. When we have $40 to $46 million, we've already been looking at the total costs. The costs are driven by the square footage on the site, and we're already looking at every way we can to reduce the costs. So generally speaking, the building, $31 million, the site. So the site is not just the fields. It's not an $8.5 million set of fields. It's all the infrastructure and drainage and everything underneath those fields so that they will be an asset to the neighborhood and not a cause of flooding in the neighborhood or not a cause of issues in the neighborhood. A 4% contingency is it's actually small amount, so that makes the CFO very happy. Soft cost refers to the $2.5 million or $2.8 million of engineering and architectural. It also refers to all of our other costs associated with the building that is not brick and mortar. So we do have details on all of that, and we can provide those at a future meeting. But I wanted to show that this is the total amount, and obviously we would also be able to slim each one of those down by commensurate amounts to get to our $40 million amount, and that will be a goal of the construction manager, which is on your agenda. Let's see here, I did it the right way. So that is, again, a summary of where we're at overall. Where we were at 2 years ago was roughly identified $12.5 million from the city and $18 million from fundraising. We've come a long way since then, and we are at this level of funding. So, as I noted before, wanted to make sure everyone did understand it's getting late, so I won't go into this very much, but we have operating plans going out 20 years to take a look at our revenues from the new facility, operating expenses to make sure that we have sufficient people. We are not coming to the governing board to say, we'll use the same staff that we have now and it'll all be okay. No, this will be a properly staffed facility and we can still make it work. So this creates a net budget, and this net surplus is what I was talking about as a funding source for potential bonds and for this important part, which is the maintenance fund that the council passed a resolution on, that they would commit to maintaining the facility. So this allows for us to put money away into a maintenance fund and pay for rehab of the facility, which we have a problem with right now in all of our other facilities. So this is getting down into the nitty-gritty to show that we have a plan. And this also doesn't include Friends of Crown, who have also committed to, once we're done with the actual capital construction, would also be a partner to put funds into a maintenance fund or to pay for specific items. This is a part of their bylaws, and what we will also come back with to the council with a memorandum of understanding. So trying to make sure that we've addressed not just the capital, but also the long-term maintenance of the facility. So you all know this and live this, and it's already been stated, and I won't go through it. I will say that this is something that Friends of Crown has used tremendously to get to where they're at now, and now with if we can move forward, they will have even more tools to try and raise further funds. And I will stop. I think that's the shortest slideshow that the CFO's ever done. But not because I didn't want to talk a lot more.
I don't know about that.
All right, wake up, everyone. Thank you.
Happy to take any questions or have it on a following agenda, and any questions as you hit the agenda items.
Thank you. Okay, council members, do we have any conversation or questions about the presentation in this project? Alderman Wilson.
I just want to thank the team, Daniel, Raj, Pete's not here, but the Tanucci firm. It's been an amazing amount of work that's gone into this. The fundraising certainly exceeds, I think, everyone's expectations and continues on a really, really fantastic trajectory. So just thanks to all the hard work that's gone into this.
So, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, there are several items that were forwarded by the Administration and Public Works Committee to the full council for consideration. I think my recommendation at this point would be, unless there's an objection from the council, to leave them all on consent, and if the council wishes to discuss any one of them, to pull that from consent, otherwise to leave them on consent for approval.
Okay, sounds like a plan. All right, then. That concludes the special order of business. Let's go ahead and move on to the consent agenda. Alderman Braithwaite, if you would start us in the consent agenda with M1, and then today, because Alderman Suffredin is out, we don't have to do that.
I got that. Yep.
Great. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and members of City Council. This is real. I'd like to move item A1, payroll, August 21st, just keep nudging me. August, oh, what's that?
The minutes.
Okay, I'd like to approve the approval of the minutes for the regular September 11th, 2017. Also, item A1 and A2, payroll.
Could we take?
Which one?
The minutes. I just have a correction.
Okay. The minutes have been removed. I'd like to move item A1, payroll August 21st, 2017 through September 3rd, 2017, in the dollar amount of $2,808,524.51. I'd also like to move item A2, bills list September 12th, 2017, in the dollar amount of $588.36, and credit card activity period ending July 31st, 2017, in the dollar amount of $214,653.76. I'd also like to move item A31, single source purchase of 2 generic license plate recognition systems from Federal Signal Corporation, in the dollar amount of $85,000. I'd also like to move item 3.2, purchase of the police body-worn camera integration system with, you know what, I'm going to take that off. Item A3 is for action and accept to be placed on file single audit for the fiscal year of 2016. I'd like to move item 3.4, approval of the request for the proposal for construction management services at Robert Crown Community Center Complex and Library. I'd also like to move item 3.5, approval of schematic design for the Robert Crown Center. I'd also like to move item 3.6, contract amendment for number 1 for the architectural services at Robert Crown Community Center with Woodhouse Trinucci Architects, LLC. I'd also like to move item A3.7, contract.
Can I remove that from the consent agenda?
Yes, item 3.7 has been removed. I'd also like to move item 3.8, the termination of Smithereens Pest Management Services contract. Do we need to remove that? I'm sorry, say
Take
that
that
again.
off because of our
Yes.
amendment.
The amendment, yes. Item 3.8 has been removed. Bear with me. I'd also like to move item 3.9, change order number 2 with Copenhagen Haver Construction for the Fountain Square renovation project. Please note that there's no cost to that. There's no increase in that contract. Item 3.10, contract with Alvarez, Inc. for stump removal. Also, item 3.11, contract award. The following items have been held in committee. Item 3.11. Item 3.12, the contract award with Lakeshore Recycling Systems for condo refuse collection. Item 3.13, contract award to Lakeshore Recycling Systems for yard waste and food scrap collection. And then I'd like to
Hold.
Was it 3.14 also? We heard that.
We're also going to hold that.
Thank you, City Manager. Also hold item 3.14, which is the solid waste fund analysis. I'd like to move item A4, resolution 73-R-17, authorizing the settlement of litigation.
It's off.
Oh, that's
off.
Okay.
For discussion, it was passed in committee.
I'm sorry.
It was passed in committee, A4, correct?
I think she voted no on that. I wrote 3 to 1.
It's just offered discussion.
Thank you. It is off. All right, I'll continue. Item 3A5, Resolution 75-R-17, authorizing the city manager to execute an amendment to the commercial lease and city-owned property at 1804 Maple Avenue with PharmaCann. That's for action. I'd also like to move item A6, Resolution 74-R-17, authorizing the city manager to execute a lease agreement with Northwest Center against sexual abuse for commercial office space at the city center. I'd also like to move item A7, Ordinance 98-0-17, amending the City Code Section 9-1-5, Police Powers. Leave it. All right. I'd like to move item A8, Ordinance 95-0-17, establishing a new wholesale water rate for the village of Skokie. I'd also like to move item A9, Ordinance 101-0-17, amending the city code to establish a three-way stop. Pardon me, just a quick amendment on that. On item A9, the Ordinance 101-0-17, amending the city code to establish this three-way control at the intersection, we actually moved to have that introduced and for action this evening. Item A10, Ordinance 90-0-17, amending the City Code Section 10-11-8, parking prohibited at all times, to delete the south side of Central Bridge from the schedule to allow parking on the side of the bridge. That's also for introduction and action. I'd also like to move item A11, Ordinance 96-0-17, amending the City Code 8-4-12 to establish a fee for recycling program for I think we're
going to hold that as well.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to hold item A11. That's the Ordinance 96-0-17, amending the City Code 8-14-12 to establish a fee for recycling program for multi-family apartment buildings with 6 units or greater. Okay. I'd also, item A12 is Ordinance 81-0-17, Ordinance 81-0, authorizing the city manager to execute the sale of, okay, thank you. Authorizing the city manager to execute the sale of contract city-owned real property located at 2005 Gray Avenue to Evanston Township School District 202. That's also for introduction and action. That concludes my report, Mayor. What did I forget? Oh, I was reading from this.
My guess is that's off.
Ordinance 52-17, authorizing the city manager to enter into a real estate contract for the sale of city-owned property adjacent to the Evanston Public Library at 1714 and 1718 Chicago Avenue. That's for action. Off. That's off. Okay.
And what about the next page?
I'm sorry, I was reading from this where I left my notes. My apologies. Ordinance A14, 84-017, surplus property. And then A15, which is Ordinance 72-17, amending the City Code Section 11-2, 11B mobilization program by amending the amount of liable tickets that need to be immobilized from 5 to 3. That's also for action. Now that concludes my report.
Terrific. Thank you, Alderman Braithwaite. Alderman Rainey, would you like to take us through the consent agenda for Planning and Development Committee?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Planning and Development Committee met this evening. P1 is off the consent agenda and will be addressed by the committee chair. Ordinance 99-017, amending the zoning map on 829 Simpson Street, I believe is also off the consent agenda. Is that correct?
Which one?
We didn't, that wasn't a, well, was that unanimous to introduce it?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was, okay.
Just for introduction.
Ordinance 99-017, amending the zoning map to rezone 1829 Simpson Street from R3 two-family residential district to a B1 business district. That is for introduction. P3, Ordinance 100-017, granting a special use permit and major variation for a Type 2 restaurant at 1829 Simpson Street in the B1 business district is off the consent agenda. Is that correct?
Why?
Why?
Pardon me?
No.
Why would it be off?
I thought there, oh, it's just for, you're right, I'm sorry. There were so many people, I'm sorry.
It's 12:20 a.m. It's okay, Alderman Rainey.
It's for introduction only, I'm sorry. All right, so P4, is ordinance 97-017, granting a special use permit for a Type 2 restaurant located at 633 Howard Street in the B3 Business District for a restaurant known as Cafe Coralie. This is for introduction, suspension of the rules, and action. Ordinance 93-017, amending various sections of Title IV, Chapter 14, Design and Project Review. This is for introduction. Ordinance 92-17, zoning text amendment regarding transit-oriented development parking requirements. This is for action. Let's see. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Alderman Rainey. Alderman Fisk, would you take us through the Human Services Committee?
Sure. H1 is approval of the Torrance Grant expenditure payment for lead rehabilitation at 1321 Elmwood. Staff recommends approval of payment for the lead rehabilitation of the property at 1321 Elmwood. Lead sources were identified and have been abated from the address. A clearance was performed certifying the abatement, and funding is by the Lead Paint Hazard Grant. And the Cook County Board of Commissioners created the Lead Poisoning Prevention Fund for the purposes of utilizing excess sums from the Torrance Indemnity Fund. And that's for action. H2 is Ordinance 39-017, amending City Code Title 8, Chapter 5, Sections 1, 3, and 4, weeds. The Evanston Environment Board. Doesn't anyone want to take this off and talk about weeds? No, I'm kidding. It's late. I'm kidding. Okay, so recommend City Council adoption of Ordinance 39-017, amending the City Code. That's for action.
Thank you, Alderman Fisk. Alderman Wilson, would you like to take us through the Rules Committee?
Item 01, Resolution 77R17, amending the City Council rules and organization of the City Council, Section 17 minutes, referencing video and audio recordings. The Rules Committee and staff are recommending that the Council adopt the resolution amending the Council Rule 17, referencing the video and audio recordings for the various boards, commissions, and committee meetings as set forth in the memorandum. Move approval.
There's one more. 02.
Oh, sorry, consent. What am I doing? It's a little late. 02, Ordinance 85-017, creating Title II, Chapter 12 of the City Code, forming an Equity and Empowerment Commission. The Staff and Rules Committee are recommending that the Council adopt Ordinance 85-017, amending Title II, Chapter 12 of the Evanston City Code, which creates the Equity and Empowerment Commission.
Terrific. Thank you. Is there a motion on the consent agenda?
Approval.
Second.
City Clerk, could you take the roll?
Alderman Fisk.
Aye.
Alderman Braithwaite.
Aye.
Alderman Nguyen.
Aye.
Alderman Wilson.
Aye.
Alderman Ruth Simmons.
Aye.
Alderman Ravel. Alderman Rainey.
Aye.
Alderman Fleming.
Aye.
Okay, the consent agenda passes 8-0. Alderman Braithwaite, could you take us through the items that were pulled off the Administration and Public Works? A32 is the first one.
Need a little bit of coaching.
I got them written down here. I can help you. A3.
So A3.2 is the purchase of the police body-worn camera integration system from Axiom.
We can't.
Oh, the minutes. I'm sorry.
Sorry, that was my fault. Yeah, the minutes. So
I'd like to move approval of the minutes, regular minutes from September 11th, right?
6th. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm
No,
reading from
no.
wrong.
You're right.
She had a correction.
just so we're clear, the consent agenda, it's the approval of minutes for the regular City Council meeting on July 24th, 2017, which were corrected, and the September 6th, 2017 minutes.
Yes.
Those are the ones.
Yes. The correction I want to make is that I was at the September 6th City Council meeting. I was late, however, because it came right after Human Services, which I chair.
Could we speak into our microphones, please?
Sure. Sorry, Alderman Rainey. I was at the September 6th City Council meeting. I was late. That meeting came right after, well, for a good reason, but that meeting came right after the Human Services Committee, which I chaired, and I was definitely there.
Okay, so we will, City Clerk, can you just make sure that the minutes reflect that? Okay.
I just, go ahead.
Alderman Nguyen?
Yes, I would like to ask about the minutes that we are missing from July 10th and August 14th.
Those were on the agenda for the last meeting.
I think the last meeting, all the minutes were held.
Then no one provided corrections to those minutes, so they should be approved as they were for that meeting.
Not if they're held.
Well, not if they're held, and I think I had some corrections to them that I'd sent you in the email.
No, those were all for the.
All right, I'll move that those 7:10 and 8:14 minutes be held till the next meeting.
Second.
Okay. It's been properly moved. Oh, I don't call it.
Okay, yeah, it's, okay.
Why would the corrected minutes be held?
So that we put back on the agenda.
I don't know if you corrected them. I sent you an email with
Right,
corrections.
and I sent the corrected minutes to you and everyone else on the council.
But only from the 24th, not for the 7th.
There were no other corrections to minutes. I went through all of your corrections, and they were all for the 24th.
We haven't voted on them, so.
All right.
And they're not resubmitted, so you need to resubmit them then. If they're held, they need to be back in a packet, just procedurally.
Okay. So just since there's just a little uncertainty, city manager, could you work with the city clerk in making sure we're just clear for the next meeting so we get all the minutes that Clerk Reed needs to get here for the council, okay? So all right, so on this particular item with our minutes for this meeting, okay, is there a motion? Is it
Move approval.
I'll second. As amended.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
M1 passes 8-0.
Item A 3.2, which is the purchase of the police body worn camera integration systems from Axiom Enterprises. And that's for action. I pulled it off just I shared some of this at AP&W. I thank the police for their community outreach. They came to the 2nd Ward and a few other wards to present the information. I just think this evening, part of the discussion is how do we conduct our FOIAs. I'm somewhat concerned, the same thing with the body camera images, to make sure that we have very clear policies regarding our juveniles, how they're filmed, and if that information is released or shared with the public, that when possible the faces are blurred out, the names are redacted, and just we're very careful with how we display that, just based on the last incident. The other question that I asked was how long will we keep our video on file? So I think this is going to be a good thing. The police are welcoming it. I think it will help answer a lot of questions that we have publicly, but I just want to make sure that our residents understand all the moving pieces. So I'm calling it out. How we roll it out, we'll just be careful, think carefully about it. That's it.
Thank you, Alderman Braithwaite. Alderman Fleming?
Just to add to that FOIA issue, not only for the juveniles, but I would like to see some very clear language just about accessing FOIA. So may I FOIA body camera footage if I see my neighbor with the police officer? I think we need to be very clear about who can and who cannot access body cam or dash cam footage. And then even if we want to go so far to make some language about what's available to the public versus just a FOIA for my own information. People are going to expect, I think, in this age of digital transparency, that they can see body camera footage. If we're committing $1 million+ to it, I think there's going to be an expectation that people can view it. So I would like us to have a very, very clear policy before these go live in January.
Thank you, Alderman Fleming. Alderman Braithwaite?
And just, I think we talked about this at our last city council meeting or some previous human services meeting. We may have to invest in someone to help to edit that video just to meet the demand of the public. So there's an unseen cost there that eventually the city manager and council will have to tackle.
And Mr. Mayor, Alderman Braithwaite, members of the council, you will see at this point, the only new hire in next year's budget is that position.
Okay.
Citywide.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What's the next item that was?
Is there a motion on that?
Oh, thank you. I did move for approval. I don't know if was there a second?
Okay. City Clerk, can we take the roll on A32?
Alderman Fisk.
Aye.
Alderman Braithwaite.
Aye.
Alderman Nguyen. Alderman Wilson. Alderman Ruth Simmons.
Aye.
Alderman Ravel. Alderman Rainey.
Aye.
Alderman Fleming.
Aye.
All right, A32 passes 8-0. Alderman Braithwaite, A37.
Yep. Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, I'd like to move item A3.7, which is the contract extension with Community Counseling Services, LLC, for consulting services for action in the doubt. Go ahead.
Okay, is there any discussion? Alderman Fleming?
I just had a quick question. I realize this, I think, is our second or maybe third contract extension. Marty, can you clarify? It doesn't have to be right this second, but in the letter that they gave you in September, it says that they are proud to, list all that they have done, and I'm assuming that was done in partnership with Friends of Crown and other community members. So as we are continuing our fundraising, I realize in the grand scheme of, 15 million or whatever we're trying to get to, this is not a lot, but I would like to have some more clarity in terms of what CCS has actually brought to the table financially versus how they maybe have just been more of an administrative helper to our Friends of Robert Crown and community members.
Thank you, members of council, Alderman Fleming. Just to be clear, so in many cases we don't have a notification that Michael Happ brought this gift home, or that Friends of Crown brought a given gift home. Quite often it is a team effort, but I do hear you very clearly. I will put a report together on that, and I would also then note that just at the back of the presentation, or their agreement recommendation is who's doing what. And for the most part, in the next 3 months, a big part of what we'll be doing is transitioning to the city taking over, with a couple members of the finance staff taking over the administration, so that we are better suited to have all of the admin, everything taken over. We've already received about 1.5 million in gifts, cash, so we want to be in a better position to support the 501c3 and monitoring all of that as we get into spending the dollars. So, but I have your request, and I will do a follow-up memo as far as who's contributed what, because Friends of Crown do deserve that. They have been a huge player, and there are volunteers, and quite often they're not listed in this. So they have been huge players as far as getting donations. So we will follow up with that.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. If there's no further discussion, City Clerk, can you call the roll on that? We've got the motion with the second for A37.
Alderman Fisk. Aye. Alderman Braithwaite.
Aye.
Alderman Nguyen. Aye. Alderman Wilson. Aye. Alderman Ruth Simmons.
Aye.
Alderman Ravel. Aye. Alderman Rainey.
Aye.
Alderman Fleming.
No.
Okay. A37 passes 7-1. Okay. Alderman Braithwaite, A38.
You got it. Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, I'd like to move item A3.8. It's the termination of Smithereen Pest Management Services contract. We actually, from the committee, we made an amendment that I didn't share earlier. And so unanimously, after a healthy conversation, we moved to extend the contract agreement to Rose Pest Control Solutions, and we authorized the city manager and staff to look into having Rose fulfill the 3-year contract and to come back to Administrative Public Works with that language that we can vote on. So for clarification, it was Smithereens. They were awarded the 3-year contract based on the number of complaints that staff complained yesterday. Mm-hmm. There were, again, a number of complaints, and so they decided to terminate that contract. Right. Rather than have them come back at the end of December for a new RFP, we just want them to replace the current vendor.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's what we want them to look into.
Okay.
I mean, it's kind of tricky.
And we'll come back with action.
Thank you.
Alderman Rainey.
I guess he sort of cleared that.
Okay, all right, good. Okay,
It's early.
so,
My apologies. Someone's going to see this and like, what is
The
he
most
talking
important thing is they're going to take over now
Yeah.
until
we'll
December
make it legal.
31st.
Thank you.
And staff is going to work going forward.
And so, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I believe the motion then is the accept staff's recommendation for the termination of the current contract with the City of Evanston and Smithereen Pest Management Services, direct the city manager to contract with Rose Pest Control through the end of 2017 and return to the city council with appropriate actions to have Rose finish the remaining 2 years of the contract, and we'll bring back that action. So that would be the
all right,
motion.
thank you, City Manager. Is someone move that motion?
Second.
Okay. City Clerk, could you do the roll on that, please? And this is for
Alderman.
838.
Alderman Fisk. Alderman Braithwaite.
Aye.
Alderman Nguyen. Alderman Wilson. Alderman Ruth Simmons.
Aye.
Alderman Ravel. Alderman Rainey.
Aye.
Alderman Fleming.
All right, 838 passes 8-0. Alderman Braithwaite.
A4.
A4.
Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, I'd like to move item A4, Resolution 73-R-17, authorizing the settlement of all litigation and claims with Trinette Lark, Bria Diaz, and Prince Ford. That's for action.
Is there any discussion? I think Alderman, I don't recall who moved this. This is, all right, this is A4, Resolution 73-R-17. If no one calls, okay, let's go ahead and City Clerk, can you take the roll?
Alderman Fisk. Alderman Braithwaite.
Aye.
Alderman Nguyen. Alderman Wilson. Alderman Ruth Simmons.
Aye.
Alderman Ravel. Alderman Rainey.
No.
Alderman Fleming.
Aye.
All right, A4 passes 7-1. Okay, Alderman Braithwaite, A13.
That's on the thank you. A13 is ordinance 52-0-17, authorizing the city manager to enter into a real estate contract with the sale of city-owned property adjacent to the Evanston Public Library at 1714 to 1718 Chicago Avenue. It's for action.
Is there a second? Second. Okay, Alderman Ravel.
I just wanted to say my piece about this. In May, I voted to authorize the city manager to enter into negotiations for the sale of the library parking lot with the hope or expectation that the developers would modify their project so it would relate more sympathetically with its historic neighbors. But here we are 4 months or so later, and I don't see the evidence of the kinds of changes that I had been hoping for. In my view, the proposed building is simply too large for the property, in particular with only a 5-foot side yard setback on the north side of the proposed building would overwhelm the Willard House complex next door. The line of mature trees bordering the parking lot that you can see on the photo on page 404 of the packet will be heavily damaged, if not lost altogether, by the construction of the proposed new building. The huge shadow cast by the building will be detrimental to any landscaping at the Willard House complex. And finally, at the back of the property, there is no setback from the alley, and on page 390 of the packet, you can see the extremely cramped conditions the proposed building would create, a congested area that will need to accommodate the cars accessing the parking garage for the new building, as well as the underground parking for the library and the NU Residence Hall immediately across the alley. So I will be voting no on this tonight.
Thank you, Alderman Ravel. Alderman Fisk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This has been an extraordinary process and project, and we haven't even gotten started with the plan development part of it. We've been talking all along about the sale of the library parking lot for an extraordinary public benefit. And the public benefit that we're going to be seeing from this, when we decided a couple of years ago to go out for an RFP, was to look and see whether we could find a development team that would be interested in building an office building, a Class A office building in the downtown, something that we desperately need. Over the past several years, we've lost a lot of growing businesses, a lot of startup businesses who need Class A office space from Evanston to other communities, including Chicago and Skokie and other places. So how does Evanston compete? What do we do now, and what can we do? We've been talking regularly in council meetings and in economic development about the retention of businesses. How do we support the small businesses that are in Evanston? How do we support the small businesses that are currently utilizing retail space that roughly averages about 2,000 square feet? You need people to come into Evanston who want to do niche retail if you don't have the big retail for them. And we do have a little bit of big retail, and we've had trouble actually renting out that retail. Fortunately, Target has showed up, and they're going to take some of that, but it's the niche retailers that really have kept our downtown thriving and in business, along with the restaurants. So what does an office building provide besides 500 office workers who are going to be coming into the downtown? Those 500 office workers are going to be shopping and dining every day. No one sits at their desk for 10 hours a day without getting up and going out. We need feet on the street in the downtown. That's been very clear for a very long time. So what do we do if we don't have developers coming, or if we have developers coming who are only wanting to build residential in the downtown? How do we attract an office building developer? It's not easy. And so a couple of years ago, when we took a look at this and decided to go out for an RFP, the library lot seemed like the perfect place to put it. Close to downtown, right on the border of downtown and transitional zone, close to Northwestern, lots of foot traffic, a definite relation to the rest of the downtown with building heights that are actually taller than this. In the first ward, if you come to my ward meetings regularly, you know that every single development that we talk about in my ward comes to a ward meeting, and we talk about it, and no holds barred. People are encouraged to say whatever they want to, and extend criticisms, extend praise. In this case, when the developers first came, it wasn't good. It was a nondescript building, 14 stories, was not at all, I think, representative of the downtown. What we found out, though, is that the development team was interested in being responsive. And they reorganized. They hired a wonderful architect, Paul Janicki, who is going to team with Halliburton Root. And when they came back, I remember being in a meeting and looking at the second round of drawings and going, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. And so I congratulate Paul on that. It's an extraordinarily interesting and wonderful site between two landmark properties that have historical significance to Evanston, but it's also part of the downtown. There's also the 1738 condo building right on the corner that is a tall building as well. So these structures, the Women's Club and the WCTU, have managed to work pretty well together as our downtown has developed, and actually as that block has developed. The public library used to be a little single building right on that corner. I think the First Methodist Church in Evanston was there. But it went from being a Carnegie library to a slightly bigger library, and now the beautiful library that we see now. The Northwestern apartment buildings is a very large apartment building, and as I've mentioned, 1738 also is very large. So this to me is a unusual combination of public interest, extremely good design, extraordinary responsiveness on the part of developers that I don't see ever. And I have to compliment them because as some of you know, I sold real estate for 25 years. I know developers pretty well. I pretty much look askance at most developers. I saw a team of people who were committed to sitting down and talking with the neighbors. And I think probably if you look back, there's been over a dozen meetings. And I've been at a number of them. There have been others. I've gone along with them to meetings out in the field. They've come to my ward meetings. I have never seen anyone from that development team that wasn't open-minded or responsive. We've walked down alleys with neighbors. We've walked down the street. We've looked at the height. We've talked about how the design of the facade of the building is going to respect Evanston's traditional and landmark architecture in the downtown. This is a building that someday is going to be a landmark in our downtown. I mean, if you like the Marshall Field building, if you like Carlson building, if you like some of the other historic, character-giving buildings in our downtown, this is going to be one of them. I can't tell you how lucky we are to have this. I understand the concerns of the Women's Club and the WCTU. And we have to weigh that against the benefits that we're going to receive here. This is in a transitional zone, so they've come down from 14 to 11 stories. They've reduced the size of the building overall. They're replacing all of the parking that's going to be lost on the library lot. In meetings we've sat in, we've talked about construction management plans. We've actually gone down lists, point by point, of the concerns that both the WCTU and the Women's Club had. And again, I have never seen developers bend over backwards the way that this development team has. I'm extraordinarily proud to have met them and to have worked with them. I'm not easy to work with on these issues. I'm not. Ann Rainey's going to laugh at me, but I ask a lot. I ask a lot of developers, and usually don't get it. In this case, it's not just me. It's that they wanted to build an iconic building and bring it to Evanston. And all of you know how lucky we are to have that? It's extraordinary. So I have to say that when I walk by the Marshall Fields building, there's a little plaque, I think from 1927, where the Artistic Council of Evanston erected this plaque saying how wonderful the building was. I think we're going to have a plaque like that on this building. And thank you, Paul, for your design, and Greg and Bruce and everyone who's worked on this. And why are you shaking my arm?
Thank you, Alderman.
Because I'm going on.
Thank you, Alderman.
Okay.
I know we've got a few other people that want to speak. Okay. So Alderman Nguyen.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I respect Alderman Fisk's opinion about many, many things, but on this one, I have to disagree. I think the building is actually a beautiful building, but I think we're trying to shoehorn it into much too small a site and the wrong site. And so I believe Alderman Revelle has stated many of the same reasons that I am going to vote against this. These two buildings that are on either side are much too significant Evanston buildings for us to try and shoehorn a building, no matter how lovely, into such a small space. The setback is too narrow. The alley issues are already terrible when we look at this design. No, I was concerned when we went out first for an RFP and two of our best developers bowed out and didn't present us with any design, and that to me was a signal that we were on the wrong track. So for all of the reasons that have been stated by many of the people in opposition, and I can't vote for this. I think that this isn't the right project. I'm not sure what the right project is, but this is certainly not it.
Thank you. Thank you, Alderman Nguyen. Alderman Wilson?
Thank you. Just super quick, I've heard both sides of this, and I've understood what both sides have had to say. The Women's Club mentioned, I think the expression someone used last time was an expectation of no harm. I think that the Willard campus is at greater risk of harm, but my expectation as we proceed is that the developers will continue to do what it takes to help ensure that is minimized and mitigated, and That's my expectation. So to answer a number of comments and correspondence I've received from other constituents, we don't only sell property. Sometimes we buy property. So this isn't, it's not a finite bucket of property that we have. So there are occasions where we buy property, sometimes we sell it, and hopefully we're making good, thoughtful decisions when we do make a decision to sell it. I'm also hopeful that some of this funding will be able to be utilized to help some of our existing parks and to improve the condition of some of the ones that do desperately need some upgrades. So.
Thank you, Alderman Wilson. Alderman Rainey?
Yes. Well, I was hoping for something brilliant, but I think what we're getting is something very important. And I've followed Alderman Fisk very carefully on this one. I've looked to her for her leadership, and I agree with Alderman Wilson that there's not going to be any harm to either of these adjacent properties. And based on Alderman Fisk's observation of the developers, I think they're very responsible. And it's interesting to think about what it used to be like to have Washington National and all of the office workers there. That building used to empty out at lunchtime. I'm sure it's different now because, you know, there's not a lot of people in the office all the time anymore. But supposedly this is going to be for 500 office workers. And those people, this is going to be the best thing for small business in downtown Evanston that we've seen in a long time. And I'm very excited about that. We have enough people who live in the downtown to keep our restaurants and our movie theaters occupied in the evenings. But in the daytimes, we really don't have that much going on. So I'm really looking forward to people being in the downtown during lunch hour and shopping in our stores. And I think it's going to be very, very good for the small businesses in downtown. So I'm going to support it because I'm confident that that both the Women's Club and the WCTU will be made whole and done no harm.
Thank you, Alderman Rainey. Alderman Fleming?
Yeah, I have a question if staff can just clarify, because as we all have heard a lot of things from the community, and I just want to use this opportunity to clarify some of those. So I'm not sure who the staff member is, but there's been a lot of talk about a downtown Evanston plan, which I was not part of, but that people seem to think this parking lot was supposed to be a park, and I've asked around and was told that the downtown Evanston plan is a plan but not codified into law. So I think we should use this opportunity to clear that up if possible. That's my first question. Are you the guy?
Well, Alderman Fleming, members of the council, we'll be back next week to go through the downtown plan. I don't know, Mrs. Leonard's here. This specific parcel would not have been called out specifically as part of one of the category. Please correct me.
It was called out as a park in the downtown plan.
Okay, thanks. And so the plan itself, as I think you all know, was never codified. So the zoning, Mrs. Leonard, was never changed to institutional zone or a park zone.
Correct. The plan was adopted, but it's a guiding document in the sense that it's principles and ideas, but the code never was adopted, so nothing can change with regards to that.
So the zoning on the parcel did not change?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. So thank you for clearing that up. And my second part was the transparency issue that people have spoken about regarding 3 guys, then 2 guys, and, 5 meetings, no meetings. I mean, there's been a lot of communication, and I think it's valuable that we clear that up now from the podium. So can you just speak to the developers, who's in, who's out, the name? And then my other question had to do with, maybe Judy can answer this, where the building is. So I know there's people talking about it's too close to the alley, it's too far, but where are we? I know we have a picture now. I'm assuming right now we're just voting on selling or not selling, but then there's a whole lot of steps that need to happen before this building is built. So whoever can go first.
Then the plan development process starts.
Which will then allow the developer direction from the city council staff to say where it sits, how close, how far, how tall, everything.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. Can you answer that question, please, about the developers?
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I'm Paul Zelmazak, the Economic Development Manager. I think, Alderman Fleming, I think you're referring to the fact that the original RFP request had Connor Commercial was the name of the entity. Mr. Steck and Mr. Larson have been at the helm on this project since the very beginning, and they were indeed kind of leading the project. Connor Commercial took a back seat and decided to, the way I'll describe it, they're potentially going to be the contractor on the project. They're a building company in McShane. They have a development arm called Connor. So Mr. Steck has been at the helm on this project since the very beginning. He came to Economic Development Committee and to subsequent city council meetings and each of the first ward meetings that Alderman Fisk had hosted. And I don't know if that answers your question completely, but.
Yeah, it does. I just wanted to make that public statement because there's been a lot of concern about, you know, these names changing, and people, I think, have been a little confused by that process.
Okay.
And if I may, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, just for the record, this process began in earnest in July of 2016 when the council authorized negotiations. It was then before the Economic Development Committee in November. It was before the council in April of 2017 and May of 2017. And then prior to that, there were a number of meetings as well held. So I think I want to dissuade anyone in thinking that this was not a full public process that was launched very early on. I'm looking at just all the news accounts to this. The first again began in July of 2016. So it's been a 14-month roughly process that has been involved. There have been multiple community meetings, been covered in the press, discussed here multiple times. So
yeah, and I appreciate that. I know that, but I understand that everyone's not staying up to 2 in the morning. So I thought it was worth us saying that. I will support the project. I think I can't get very excited by an office building, but I'm also not very excited by what it is now as a parking lot. I don't think it makes sense for us to move into making it into a park. We have several parks that have an F rating that we don't have money to take care of. And I would also like Alderman Wilson said, I would like to, once the evening's over, refer this over to staff to have on a meeting maybe in January when we're finished with our budget to talk about how to allocate, if we sell, how to allocate this money so that it can be for public use since this is public land. I think that's very important to me that people see the tangible benefit they have if we decide to sell this property and they don't see it just going into our general funds. So I would like to have that if this passes in January.
Thank you, Alderman Fleming. So we have the motion. It was seconded. City Clerk, could you go and take the roll, please?
Alderman Fisk. Alderman Braithwaite. Alderman Nguyen. Alderman Wilson.
Aye.
Alderman Ruth Simmons.
Aye.
Alderman Ravel. Alderman Rainey.
Aye.
Alderman Fleming.
Aye.
So A13 passes 6-2. Okay, we have one more item that was pulled off the consent agenda, and Alderman Rainey, could you introduce that one? It was P1.
Mr. Mayor, P1, Housing Opportunities for Women, Home and Affordable Housing Fund application. This item does not have to do with whether or not the property that Howe has purchased is going to be at this location. It has to do with whether or not the application for the $550,000 for housing opportunities for women is going to be approved. That is my interpretation of this provision. So I move approval.
Okay, so it's been moved for approval. It's been seconded. Is there any discussion?
I just wanted to say that that's what this is. This is not whether or not we like the location or we like the use.
It's about the use of affordable housing
about the
funds
use of the
from
money.
the city
Yeah.
for this project.
Right.
Okay. All right. Seeing no lights, City Clerk, could you take the roll, please?
Alderman Fisk. Alderman Braithwaite. Alderman Nguyen. Alderman Wilson. Alderman Ruth Simmons.
No.
Alderman Ravel. Alderman Rainey.
No.
Alderman Fleming.
No.
The noes. Okay. So that I want to make sure I didn't mess up the count. So I've got 5 noes. So this failed to pass. This is P1 failed to pass 5-3. Okay. All right.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'd like
Alderman Rainey.
Yes, I'd like to refer this matter back to Planning and Development after after October 30th, when the council has its meeting regarding affordable housing.
Do I need a second to that?
I have that
just a
right to
referral.
make that motion.
Okay, so that's just a referral.
That's a referral.
Okay. All right, City Manager, if you can
So
note
that would come
note
back
that.
then at the meeting of November 13th.
Okay. All right, we're moving on to call of the wards. Let's see, who are we starting with today? Alderman Fisk? Yes.
Thank you, everyone, for your vote on the library parking lot. I've been working on trying to attract a office building into downtown now for over 8 years. This is going to be wonderful, and we will work very, very hard to make sure that the Women's Club and the WCTU benefit from this development as well as everyone in Evanston. But this is a wonderful way to move forward, and it's important that we do so. It's important to all of the citizens of Evanston that we do so, and to do so in a wonderful, beautiful way feels real good. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Alderman Fisk. Alderman Braithwaite?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm looking at the time, it's 1 a.m., and we still have a number of residents that are still here. So I just really want to thank the number of people from the Second Ward that came out this evening who shared their opinion on a wide variety of issues. We don't always agree, but we do maintain integrity with how you feel, and I thought that people were incredibly civil in articulating the issues. So I'm really proud of the number of folks who came out. Thank you for your presence here tonight, and I've just considered myself very fortunate to serve a very diverse group of people. I call the Second Ward the most racially and economically diverse ward, and you showed it tonight. And so for those of you that I haven't been able to respond to all the emails coming into this evening, I want to apologize. And that's that. I also want to send a quick word of congratulations. I don't know if you all realize, but our city staff, our Parks and Recs team are finalists in Louisiana. They've sort of posted that on Facebook, so tomorrow they'll find out whether or not that they win. And later today. Oh, later today. So they will find out. Yes, I stand corrected. And then I think they left, but I really want to acknowledge Sarah, Savannah, and Johanna for their hard work on this project. This isn't, it's a complicated issue, and we're going to discuss it. So Alderman Rainey, thank you very much for your referral. It definitely doesn't end with this vote. And I am thankful for Britt for engaging in the whole public dialogue. I want to continue to meet with the neighbors, and I see you out there, so thank you very, very much. To be able to give project updates and, like you've always done, continue to listen to the neighbors. And I think, if nothing else, I want to say to them that this is a very united group of neighbors, and I think that this dialogue has brought us closer together. So there's a high standard that has been set by a group of owners in that area, and again, we'll keep the lines of communication open. Lastly, there was someone who made reference to the number of NU arrests. I can't remember during public comments. My mind is kind of cloudy, but I just want to reach out to, I would like someone from our staff to reach out to NU. I don't know why I didn't consider that their police could actually arrest people. So for trespassing. So if that is true, I would like for our staff to reach out to them and get some data around that, maybe from 2015, 2016. As you all know, we are conducting an alternatives to arrest, and maybe that's something that we can fold into our conversation. Again, not looking for data, not necessarily saying that it's true or not. That concludes my report.
When is the next committee meeting of alternatives to arrest?
I want to say it's maybe the first Friday in October, so I'll get you that date. It'll be on the line on our.
It'll be posted as a public meeting.
It's October 6th.
Okay. Thank you, Alderman Braithwaite. Alderman Nguyen?
Yes, I just have one announcement. The next Third Ward office hours are Thursday, October 5th from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. at Brothers K at the corner of Hinman and Main. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Wilson. Alderman Ruth Simmons.
Thank you. Thank you to all of the Fifth Ward residents and beyond that came out and reached out to have comment regarding zoning changes. Also, thank you to the Arts Council for approving our mural at Foster at the abandoned viaduct. We are looking to have our mural installed by November 1st. Thank you.
Great. Alderman Ravel?
Thank you. I'd just like to invite everybody to come to the 7th Ward meeting this Thursday, September 28th. We're going to hear about the equity and empowerment plan for Evanston, the plan development process, and sort of an overview of the various development proposals in various stages of discussion in the downtown. Also a preview of the 2018 Sheridan Road Improvement Project. We're going to have a report from the police fire chief about fire department services, and then also obviously a police report. And that's at the Ecology Center, 7:00 p.m.
Thank you, Alderman Ravel. Alderman Rainey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tomorrow is an advisory committee meeting regarding the Howard Street corridor, 3:00 tomorrow afternoon here at the Civic Center. Everybody's invited. Tomorrow night is our big funding meeting for CD. If you're an applicant or an interested party, come and join us, or you can see us live on TV. And Sunday is Bike the Ridge, 9:00 in the morning, and the weather is going to be spectacular, about 67 degrees and sunny. Always perfect on Bike the Ridge Day. So there's going to be the School of Rock and the fun, Fall Frenzy at Ridgeville Park District, and it's just going to be a great day.
And we can expect to see you in your four-wheeler, right?
Absolutely. It's going to be arriving on Saturday.
All right. Thank you, Alderman Rainey. Alderman Fleming.
On Thursday, Thursday, October the 12th at 7 p.m., Alderman Rainey and myself will be having a joint ward meeting at the Levy Center to discuss the budget. And so our CFO is going to be coming and fielding all of the hard questions. Also, I want to just make sure my referral went through, since I did it before we voted, that we are going to have on this calendar sometime in January the $4 million allocation. So make sure that goes through. And then I would like to ask staff, I guess it's for the chief, if he can look at the questions posed by my ward resident, Mitra. I can't remember her last name, I'm sorry, but I can get him a copy of those questions. If he can look at those and be prepared to address, thank you, Mitra Hartman. If he can be prepared to address some of those at the Human Services meeting when we discuss the police review and such, which is on October 9th, that would be great.
Great. Thank you, Alderman Fleming.
Second.
Yeah, Human Services, October 2nd is the date, October 2nd. Yep, we got it. Okay, Alderman Wilson, do you want to lead us into executive session, please?
Thank you. Pursuant to 5 Illinois compiled statutes, ILCS 120/2A, I move that the City Council convene into executive session to discuss agenda items regarding litigation and personnel. These agenda items are permitted subjects to be considered in executive session and are enumerated exceptions under the Open Meetings Act. These exceptions are 5 ILCS 120/2A, C1, and C11.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Is there a motion to adjourn? Second?
Executive session.
All in favor? All right, any opposed? All right. The meeting is recessed.